Yo, what's up, all? Hey, it's a good sign right away that the audio works perfectly, or at least that it's showing that it's transmitting.
Yahoo!
Let me know if you're hearing the audio just fine. Uh, Spinny bit down there at the bottom. Hmm, I'm not sure what spinny bit is. Who are you? Oh, okay, it's the reactive avatars for the Discord call, but I don't play this game in the Discord call, so I don't know why it's active now. It's super interesting. Well, okay, so it's going to look weird for a few seconds while I go to the overlay scene. There we go. Found it. Got rid of it. Killed it. Uh, we do something with that. I decided I would just exit Discord entirely while I'm streaming the game, just to squeeze a few more resources out of the system. That's the source. I thought I was supposed to link these or something. I guess it's not. Okay, fine. It's out of the way right now. It's not an issue right now. I think we'll be alright. See how it goes. I gotta get into the groove of streaming again. Every time I stream because it's such a long time in between streams. Anywho. This thing is gonna be placing my times into the leaderboard on a rally league that I've hopped into. Super loose, like, because this is because the way this game runs, the clubs just do them in whatever time frame you want. As long as the thing doesn't expire itself. So I'm doing my placement rallies with zero practice with less than 12 hours to go on the thing. And the way Codemasters have built this is that it has to be a club. And yeah, so here I've already joined the placement rallies. Let's start with placement rally 1, and it should tell us, yeah, it ends in 14 hours. Okay. And these are all in Junior WRC? Yeah, these are all the same class. So this will tell the league runners where I should be. Theory is that if you're too fast in these categories, you may want to jump up a category. Or if you do slow, you jump down a category. I already know I'm slow, so I'm immediately placing myself into their Rally3 category, which is the lowest one they got. It still has quite a few people in it. So, there's still someone to race against. It's good news. Good news for them because they have someone to beat.
Oh, tough shot.
So yeah, I'm gonna try to keep the microphone close to my mouth so you can actually hear me, and hopefully not bump it with my flailing arms on the steering wheel, and then see where we place for these rallies. I'm very familiar with the Fiesta, the Junior WRC Fiesta. Yeah, it's the Rally3 spec, and the music just cuts out, which is pretty awesome. Love it. Yeah, so the game has been updated to version 1.9 since I last played this, and they added in the anti-cheat. The EA anti-cheat has been enabled into the game, and hey, good news, I don't cheat. so it shouldn't really affect me. Hopefully there was some optimization to the game as well. I did read the patch notes, I just can't remember it off the top of my head right now. So yeah, music is just entirely gone. Cool. But once we move into the in-game scene, and once I actually get rolling off the starting line, you'll see some overlays show up from courtesy of SimHub. Some overlays will show up on the stream, detailing gear speed, how much throttle, how much brake, and my timing, I guess. Anyway, let's get on into this.
Luigi did it!
Did it? He's yet to do it, but yeah, Luigi's very excited to get going. All right, so we're starting off. Yeah, the first placement rallies, I think, are just 2 events, 2 loops. There we go. Cool. They're not terribly long, 7 miles and 4.2 miles. Just 1 service area. It's fine. We did so much Japan early on when this game released because that was the recently ran rally in the real life calendar. That yeah, we ran that a lot. So I don't know if I have a what's it called, the setup for this car in Japan. I think I do. Oh, look at that! I have apparently something. Ah, yeah, from February. WRC Japan, and it just changes the alignment and the springs. Lately, the thing I've been doing is tweaking the gearing. Not really individual gears, but the overall final drive, I just shorten it so much. And so this will give me a lot of acceleration. It may hurt my top speed, but guess what? Look at this bloody map. We're over here. Look at that map on the left side of your screen, just next to my face. That's just a squiggle. It's a spaghetti line thrown on the wall. It's all turns. It's all hairpins. Japan is just like that. My strategy is to not use the handbrake in these tarmac events. I find I just lose control entirely of the car. Maybe I do whip the car around a hairpin, but it gets incredibly tight, or just lose control entirely. It's wild. So I tend to not use the handbrake on tarmac rallies. Just I haven't seen, or at least in my driving style, I haven't seen the benefit of doing that. So and to avoid that, anywho, let's see. I just monitoring the stream constantly because I just have not done it in a while. But yeah, looks like our frames are doing great. CPU usage is reasonable. Our bit rate's excellent. Yeah, 6,000 kilobits per second, and then some. So hopefully your stream is looking just fine on your end. Audio is sounding fantastic and crisp on your end as well. And then let me just get into this one again and enable some, at least the instrumental music. There we go. Yeah, we don't run the full soundtrack in this game while we're streaming. That is some licensed stuff that personally I don't have the licenses to. Anywho, double check. Alright, so those are the 3 things that were done to tuning. We get shakedowns. We'll double check our work there, see if we still like it. And once again, these tires are gonna have to last us 7 and 4, 7 and 4, 11 and 11.3 miles total between these 2 stages. One's clear, one's partly cloudy. Yeah, I mean, Japan is in the autumn is a known quantity to us. Seems to be in some darkness though, so as the light bars are equipped on the car. It's not part of the setup. So we get the medium asphalts or hard asphalt tires. I think we can get by with the mediums and even remove a spare tire. Just run no spare tire. It's replacement. I think I'm very. I think I am going to place firmly in this JRC3 category because there's nothing lower than this, to my knowledge. So I can be conservative. I already know I'm going to place here, or I have a really good feeling that I'm just going to stay in this category. And it's also my first time running a league for this game, or even any of the other previous rally games. Just haven't joined any leagues before this year. And that goes for any of the other simulation titles I've played. You know what? I will take a spare tire. Just in case. You never know. Although at that point, I'm losing so much time. Yeah, they are just going to plant me in this bottom tier anyway. We'll keep the mediums. Run the shakedown. Just there's nothing to repair yet because we haven't done any damage to the car yet. That's my goal. My goal is to just finish the rallies, get through the times, post the times, and get placed for the actual JRC event that's happening later. I think it's starting in August. Tomorrow at 5 a.m. is when the placements end. So yeah, I do have to finish these today. And they want at least one rally. I'm going to aim for all three to make a substantial stream for you guys.
Wowie!
Yeah, we'd like to do that. Anyway, let's jump on into shakedown and see how the car feels. I mean, this is already a good feeling car. I don't like that the frame rate's below 20.
Starts 120, 6 left. Good luck.
It's still below 20. Ooh, I super hate that. Even in the menu. Ooh, I am not a fan of how low that frame rate is. You know what? I'm going to take the opportunity to, hang on. Oh, I can't exit from here. Ah. Oh, please hold. Let's see. What can I figure out to do? Because I'm not going to race with 20 frames per second. Are you kidding me? Ooh, that's not good timing. Yeah, of course I didn't really check that the game would run fine, without streaming it. I'm just gonna take a glance at Task Manager real quick, see if there's anything else bottlenecking this thing. CPU is a third, like 30% of my CPU is being used right now. The CPU is it's not even capped at 85%, and that's the game. Obia Studio is primarily user of the CPU, so and my memory is at 60%. We're good there in that department. Why is the game 20 frames per second? These are all my normal settings. And I've had full screen borderless cinematic. Yeah, these are all the settings I've had on for the longest time that I've played this game. I think I want to relaunch the game just to make sure that it's running okay. Alright, So we'll do the shakedown. But I think I can exit from the service area. Just, I guess retire from this shakedown if it stays bad. This also give me a test of the overlay.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go. 120.
Oh, this is gross.
6 left. Into 6 right, 30. 5 left short, don't cut, 40. 6 right, into 4 left short. Into
Oh, this
6
is
right,
gross.
6 left, 50. Brake. Right over crest, 60.
That feels
3
really
left sharp,
twitchy.
and 1 right sharp. And 2 left short.
Man.
And right over crest, 30. 3 left, tightens. And
It's
square
staying
right.
at 20.
And 2 right short, 30. 2 left, half
It's
long
firmly
tightens,
planted at
twisting,
20.
40.
What is preventing this
Right,
game from going
keep
at
in,
a smoother
and
frame rate?
square left, opens, 30. Caution,
Here's this
square
first
left.
sector.
And laid 1 right, half long. Into slight left.
Oh, it suddenly
Into
snapped
2
to
right short.
37
And
frames.
5
Back
left,
down to
30.
23.
3 right, tightens. And
Huh.
4 left. Finish.
Okay. Back to the menu. It's at 20, 23. And it suddenly snapped up to 37. That's just still low. Y'all watching are not going to see it because I stream at 30 frames per second. But for myself, I do wish for it to be a decent frame rate. Okay. So yeah, here in the garage, we're up to 54, 55, which is decent. It's fine. It's close enough to 60. Unless that is actually a 6 and I'm misreading a 5. That happens way too often, you don't know. Alright, let's quit. I'm going to go ahead and relaunch the game. I do not like that. It's 75 here. It's 75. That's the refresh rate of the monitor. I know 75 is a weird number, but yeah, I was right. So we'll be right back.
Let's go.
Let's kill the game and relaunch it. Let it do its synchronization, etc., etc. Relaunch the game and see how it goes this time. Ooh. Yeah. Mm-mm. Mm-mm-mm-mm-mm. Yeah, it has a splash image now that it didn't used to have, which I assume is it running the anti-cheat like it does with Apex Legends. Is that the only other? Yeah. So WRC and Apex Legends are the only 2 EA games that I play off of Steam. And it's not the same anti-cheat either, actually. It's what does Apex Legends use? I forget. The little blue bear icon or something. Apparently it has now its own anti-cheat, and I think they run it in Battlefield is what I hear. And now they've enabled it for WRC.
Press the enter key to
Apparently
start.
cheating has been a problem for the rally game. I don't know why you would do that. I don't even, it's like, even me, I know I'm slow. I don't know why you would cheat. You can cut corners literally in the game. That's not enough for you, man. Reevaluate your priorities, So, alright, so back to 75 frames per second in the menu. Probably did just, alright, let's do a quick time trial just to not really spend my shakedown doing troubleshooting. Let's see. Yeah, this one sounds fine. So this won't count for the JRC placement. Of course, this is not in the club. I'm just gonna run a quick time trial event. Okay. This is good right now. This is good. Again, the music dies out though. This is weird. Just fucking go. Let's send it. I don't even know what transmission this car has, whether it's a each pattern or a sequential. I guess we'll find out. It looks modern enough that it could be a sequential.
Starts 60, square left. Good luck.
Okay, it's sequential.
5,
Paddles work.
4, 3, 2, 1, go. 60. Turn square left. 30. 4 right.
Pull the brake too
50.
early.
Slight left. Tightens 5. Long. 40.
Is the overlay showing up?
3 right. Keep
I don't
in.
see it.
And 6 left. Long. Tightens. 80. Slight left over jump. 30. Caution. Bump. And left over crest. Into 1 right. Half long. Around bales. 80.
This car has more gears than I thought it did. I thought I was in fourth already.
Into 6 left. Brake. And left over crest. And 3 right. 50. Slight left.
Should be more cognizant of my
And crest. And slight left. 120. Big jump. 110. 4 left over crest. Opens. 40.
Ooh, we almost did a front
Right,
flip.
half long. Opens. Into small crest. 130.
Huge nosedive.
5 right short. 40.
Alright.
2 left. 40. 3 right. 30. 1 right short. Over crest. 40. 3 left short. Keep in. 30. 4 right. And 4 left short. 80. 6 left. Half long. Slowing.
We'll have to next sort out. Now that we've sorted out the frame rate here, at least.
Half long. And 2
Next
left.
thing we have to sort out is the overlay.
And 3 right. Open 6, over crest, 30, 5 left, 30, 6 right. Tightens 5, and 3 left. And 6 right, 40. 5 left sharp, 80. Long crest, 50. Left over jump, and 4 right. And 6 left. Into small jump, 100. Slight left, 170. Slight right, into bump, keep right, and 6 left. Slowing, and crest, into 3 left, 70, crest. Into 5 right, 50. 4 left.
How long is this?
Keep in, 100.
I didn't really pay attention to it, but you know, we've tested enough.
3 right sharp.
We've tested enough. It's maintaining the frame rate that I want it to maintain, which is over 60. That's fine for me. Alright, so now we'll jump back over into placement rallies. Starting with the first one. I'm back to Japan. Okay. Our selection menu just kills the music. Fine. There we go. So this appears to be sunrise, I would call it. God damn, it's 50-ish frames in here. Overview was kind of low. And I get my shakedowns back. That's good. That's actually a relief. we can test it one more time. And then at that point, I think I'm going to have to lower down some graphics settings if it doesn't cooperate. So right away, if I recall how incredibly twitchy the game was. Actually, I do want to double check my profile settings for the wheel itself. Cool, so we're in WRC mode. Oh. Did I not apply that? Okay. The alignment, let's return this to default, actually. Is that really all it changed? The rear toe angle? It felt so twitchy in the front. That's really all I changed? I'm gonna leave it a default. But we do want to change the gears. Oh, I shorten it to hell. Shorten it all the way. If I bump up against the rev limiter, then I'll expand it a bit more. The springs, what did we change here? That's actually quite a bit. Slammed it to the ground. Made the spring rates. This is default. Made the rear very soft, apparently. No, not very soft, just a tad softer in the front, a bit stiffer. Right? This is default. This is what I applied. Oh. See, that's the problem with these setups from 5 months ago is I don't remember the logic between those setups. I get the logic of lowering the ride height in these stages. Particularly Japan is not bumpy. And it's nothing like Sweden that we were just seeing in the time trial. Felt very twitchy in that one. But it might have been twitchy because of the low frame rate too. Who knows? Let's just get into a shakedown, make sure the frame rate's good. It's back down to 20.
Starts 120, 6 left. Good luck.
I'm baffled. I'm speechless. I have no fucking clue why the frame rate would drop below 20 here.
2, 1, go. 120.
Turn to service area. Yeah. Oh. Oh, complete a shakedown. Yeah. We'll complete one. And in fact, if I quit out, I'll get that shakedown back, right? Anyway. Okay, we have to do more testing then. Funny, not, okay, so I'm gonna go find this stage in time trial and see under the similar conditions. The dusk. Why is the frame rate so god awful in Japan? It's not that one, this one. Okay, good. Let's see what's coming back in. All the way down to Japan. There you are. Hey, it's that stage right there. Good. Dry conditions. It's only dry or wet here. Yeah. Junior Rally. Oh. It just doesn't like FPS. And the little gear shifter cap just popped off for no The game just crashed. Beautiful. Love it.
This a very tense moment.
It is also not the tradition for a Royal Canadian wedding.
Also not the tradition, man. Come on. uh, I am baffled. Like, did adding the anti-cheat really, like, destroy the game's performance? Oh, why EA? Why? Why? All right, launch it again. Let's see what happens. Apologies to anyone expecting to see rallying happening at this point. We are like half an hour into the stream, and barely any has happened here. I want to lower it, but yeah, no, I don't want to lower it. Try to bring it closer to the mouth. Well,
Press the enter key to
I don't know.
start.
Why am I worried about my seating position? What's weird is I didn't see a crash report to submit. All right, we'll stick to time trial because I don't want to commit too much to the possibility of breaking the club event, and then I don't get to do my placement rallies. So this one here, dry conditions, are pick the Fiesta. So the music stops. Apparently now,
As of course is tradition.
tradition. We'll load into the thing. Daylight. Frame rate is at 65. This is 60. I would take this. I'd love for the frame rate to stay at 60. Is it because we're doing the rally at night? Because time trials have to be like very uniform conditions, they don't let you pick the time of day or night. I don't think it really does too much to affect the game, the competitiveness and such. So I'm just gonna go in.
Starts 120, 6 left. Good luck.
Frame rate's maintaining just fine right here.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 120. Go. 6 left, into 6 right, 30. 5 left short, don't cut, 40. 6 right, into 4 left short, into 6 right, 6 left, 50. Brake, right over crest, 60. 3 left sharp, and 1 right sharp, and 2 left short. And right over crest, 30.
This
3
feels
left,
fantastic.
tightens, and square right, and 2 right short, 30. 2 left, half long tightens, twisty, 40. 1 right, keep in. And square left, opens, 30. Caution, square left. And late 1 right, half long, into slight left, into 2 right short. And 5 left, 30. 3 right, tightens. And 4 left. And 5 right, keep in, 30, 1 right, half long, opens, 40. Caution, late 1 left, and 3 left.
Guardrail there a bit.
Right.
Alright. I was trying to promise no practice, so I don't really want to practice this at all. The joke is that I just show up for these things and go. Which is typically what I do in my clubs anyway. I don't really time trial a whole lot. So the daytime variant was fine. That maintains 60 beautifully as it's supposed to. So I'm gonna jump into the club now. Again, placement Rally 1, this is Japan. Down to 13 hours. Are we gonna get it done in time? God, I hope so. And I guess worst case scenario, um we can skip this first placement rally. We can go to the other two. They want us to complete at least one, so I can do that. Yeah, this is back down to 20, 25. Uh, it's got to be just the nighttime setting. I don't get it. I don't get it at all.
Oh.
So, yeah, there probably is a setting here. Let's go to the graphics. Let's see graphics to start with. I think we'll set this to epic. Uh-huh. That's fine. Now we'll go look at... Wait, hang on. Did that sorted out already? That's 50. That's what it was before, right? In the garage. It was always 50. So what do I knock down here? It might be shadows. That was a common one, and car reflections was another one that was midway through since the game's release. It was determined that yeah, car reflections and shadows were pretty costly. There's been some updates since, and I thought they optimized that by now. Mirrors off? Mirrors already look like shit to begin with, even on Ultra. Eh. I'll leave post-processing on. Those were the major ones that I wanted to look at. And look at, all right, so already we're up to 60, 70. It might be that kind of dumb shit. Yeah, let's go to the shakedown, see what the game does there for, okay, get down to 36. But it's rebounded back up to 60. That's beautiful. This is the beauty we want to see.
120.
Wowzer,
Good
you
luck.
did better.
So the other thing, right, while we're standing here at the starting line, before I totally, absolutely forget it, is to make sure that our overlays are running. Might have to change scenes and mess around with that real quick too. 'Cause I stuck them into the overlays. Okay, so I realized going into that scene, I have no audio at all. There's no microphone. There's nothing. There's just no audio at all. So, bear with me for a few seconds while I flip things on and off in that overlay. That overlay is just a nested scene. That's why I don't have that audio set up there. But yeah, I'll hang tight. I will be back, and I'm just gonna make it quick. Okay. Thank you for your patience.
Woohoo!
Yeah. One of the URLs did change apparently. So yeah, we'll hmm. Okay. The way I'm doing these overlays is that they don't show up for me, but they will show up for you, the viewer. That's the whole point of them. Into this. Engine looks good. Sounds awesome. I can still displaying.
5,
It should show up something as soon as we leave the line.
2, 1, go. 120. 6 left sharp into 6 right, 30. 5 left
seeing
short,
it.
don't cut, 40. 6 right into 4 left short, into 6 right, 6 left, 50. Brake, right over crest, 60. 3 left sharp, and 1 right sharp, and 2 left short. And right over crest, 30. 3 left, tightens, and square right, and 2 right short, 30. 2 left, half long tightens, twisty, 40. 1 right, keep in, and square left, opens, 30. Caution, square left, and late 1 right, half long, into slight left, into 2 right short, and 5 left, 30. 3 right, tightens, and 4 left. Finish.
Okay. Okay. Not bad. I feel like I'm really far from the wheel though. So I'll scoot up a tad. But I still want to, keep my legs. It doesn't matter what I do in any sim, my left foot, um, it's pretty tired from braking, hitting the brake, not breaking the leg. All right. Of course, audio is dead again. Doesn't matter. All right. Thank God we sorted out the frame rate issue. Oh, that's old. That's ancient. That's yeah, that's like more than 10 days old. Okay, I should not be looking at that data. Okay, so overlays. Are they gonna show up? I need to test that in. There. That overlay is there. So, settings. I am not sure what these settings mean, so I'm gonna leave them alone. We're in the correct game. I'm looking at SimHub, by the way. That's when nothing's happening in the game. I want the overlay to show up for y'all on the stream. Uh, I just realized it. Yep, there we go. That should do it.
Oh yeah!
It's such a silly thing, too. Just didn't have the scenes turned on. Or the sources turned on. The scene is turned on. Which is why I went to the overlay sub. Unless it's scenes. Man, I just didn't have sources turned on. I pointed correctly. That's why nothing happened. Alright. This would definitely 100% show up this time. The idea here is to make the thing look
Starts
like it's
120,
a
6
broadcast
left. Good luck.
from the TV broadcast of the WRC. So put my camera up there in case chat finally shows up.
Oh yeah.
The overlay on the bottom should be awesome. And in fact, I do want to change my view to include the steering wheel so you see my steering inputs too. And alright. Man, finally. It took 50 minutes of tweaking this shit. I think I'm ready to call this a broadcast ready stream.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go. 120.
There it is.
6 left. Into 6 right. 30. 5 left short. Don't cut. 40. 6 right. Into 4 left short. Into 6 right. 6 left. 50. Brake. Right over crest. 60. 3 left sharp. And 1 right sharp. And 2 left short. And right over crest. 30. 3 left, tightens, and square right, and 2 right short, 30. 2 left, half long tightens, twisty, 40. 1 right,
Oh,
keep in.
okay. Go ahead and do that. I think the penalty is fine.
And square
Yeah.
left.
As long as the overlay is working, I'm happy now.
Caution, square left. And late, 1 right.
I'll eat this shakedown
Into slight left, into
for the
2
sake
right
of getting
short,
the
and 5 left,
podcast good.
30. 3 right, tightens, and 4 left. Finish.
Okay. Unfortunately, that damage is going to take a bit of time off of our service area.
Sometimes may be good, sometimes may be shit.
Sometimes it happens. I love that sound clip so much, man. Alright, 3 more shakedowns to go to figure out the car now. That we figured out the... Don't tell anybody this.
Wow. Makey or breaky?
Oh no, what happened? I have to reload into the club. What a shame. Did I get my shakedowns back? Alright. Frame rate's holding. Frame rate is holding. Oh, those are the perfect settings. Knocking down the shadows, knocking down the car reflections. Kind of want to bring back the mirrors, although, like I said, they really do nothing in this game. Even at the highest setting, they do nothing. They look like mud. It's gross. You're really paying attention forward to the road, so it's fine. Anywho. My shakedowns are up. You can't see it because I am in the wrong scene, in the mission scene. But yeah, my shakedowns are all back. Oh me. Alright. Now we'll get proper testing, or at least chances to test the vehicle, set it up, do the tuning, make repairs, all that stuff. Alright. Now that all the technical shit is out of the way, let's get into the fun stuff, right? Right? Oh, wow.
Oh yeah.
That sounds if it does the transitions. I'm shocked. I don't know why it would do that. Because
Oh yeah.
that's tied to a different plugin than what's going on in OBS, so I don't know why it's changing scenes would
Bang bang.
cut that out. It's something to figure out later. That's been a deal since I started using Touch Portal, so we'll just take it as it is. Alright, so tuning is the default. That is default tuning. And I don't remember what time we set, which is why I'm totally okay with resetting the shakedowns. Hopefully it's not seen as cheating. I I don't think I gained anything from those shakedowns. I was mostly testing the frame rate, the overlay on the stream, and making sure things were smooth. That's what happens when you go like months without streaming normally. It's sad.
Oh!
Anyway, yeah. So, let's recap. 2 events in Japan, or 2 loops in Japan. 2 stages, totaling, what are we calling that? We call that 11.3 miles total. 1 long service area. It's fine. Both of them, one at dusk, one at night. So nighttime driving is in order for today, in Japan at least. The vehicle setup, tuning, right off the bat, just as a baseline, we're gonna send the overall drive down to the bottom. This will make the gears very short, so you'll see me slamming through gears very quickly. Hopefully that's pretty much what I end up doing in Japan, because it's just a spaghetti mess. This is spaghetti over here. Tires, that's right. I did get rid of the spare. Sticking to medium throughout the whole rally. And then... yeah, these are things we'll figure out as we go throughout the shakedowns. Things are great. Game is holding up perfectly. Wonderfully. I love my computer. It's really good at streaming. The OBS and has settled in nicely into my computer because I built it more than a year ago now. Really pleased with that. The games, not so much. You got to optimize them over the course of 3 months apparently after they release. That's a whole different subject, man. Let's not get into that now, though. All right. Yeah. Let's just do the shakedowns. Mostly it's going to be me. Driving racecraft is going to come from me. I'm still developing.
Starts 120, 6 left. Good luck.
Yeah, so Assetto Corsa, which I have been getting into every Wednesday, and I'm not streaming it because I like my head tracking in that particular game, and I wish head tracking would come to this game too. Again, another subject. But yeah, Assetto Corsa has racecraft, it's like ratings for your driver. So my racecraft is actually in the 30s, safety ratings in the upper 90s. It's fantastic, but my racecraft really suffers and tells me I'm slow. So I know across multiple simulators that my driving style is apparently slow. It's not really good to say that out loud, I guess. I don't feel good saying that out loud.
Oh, yeah!
But it's something we're working on. Hopefully, people tell me with time, the shit will happen. I've had the same wheel for close to a decade now. I only this year upgraded it to like mounted on an actual mount. What are these called? I guess a wheel stand. That's what it's called. And I got myself a handbrake, and I'm making this shit like I'm doing this more. I'm playing it more. I used to have to like lug it up from storage, clamp it onto the desk every time I wanted to play, and that wasn't conducive to actually being regular in these racing games. Yeah, now that I'm actually dedicating time to the sim racing games, maybe I do get better, maybe I don't, who knows. I'm here to have fun.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go. 120. 6 left sharp into 6 right, 30. 5 left short, don't cut, 40. 6 right into 4 left short, into 6 right, 6 left sharp, 50. Brake, right over crest, 60. 3 left sharp, and 1 right sharp, and 2 left short. And right over crest, 30. 3 left, tightens, and square right, and 2 right short, 30. 2 left, half long tightens, twisty 40. 1 right, keep in. And square left, opens 30. Caution, square left. And late 1 right, half long, into slight left, into 2 right short, and 5 left, 30. 3 right, tightens, and 4 left. Finish.
All right, a minute. A minute for the first sector is right where I want it to be. We're very close to a minute, so that's a great starting point. That's the data we're gonna take.
Yeah! Huh!
Any shakedowns prior to that, really just discard them, forget about them. I'm glad I was able to reset it and regain my shakedowns, so we can do this. Give it like a proper shot at success. Yeah, no spare tire. We're keeping Don't change the tires now that we've done a shakedown because that'll reset. Or actually clear the shakedowns entirely. Gears. Man, I do want to keep the gearing short, the ratio short, because I want to increase my acceleration. Because we're coming out of turns very quickly. I also feel like I'm no, okay. Well, we'll leave it as is. I think I just gotta play with that more. The car. What else did I feel? Well, I definitely know I missed apexes. Halfway through that shakedown, there's a couple double left-hander, almost right-angle turns, and I should have chained that better. That's probably my steering rather than the car's setup. But it could be helped by maybe a little bit of setup. I'm gonna... Alright. I'm gonna go on the limb and check out if there's any setups online for this. I know a website called, was it WRC Setups? WRCsetups.com. If you're playing this game, it's like a repository of setups that people post. There's only 467 setups. For the amount of combination of cars and rallies, stages, that seems like a low number. So, we'll filter by Junior WRC in Japan. Oh, cool. There's more than one. There's 4. Oh, that's fantastic. 3 of them are for 1 person. Okay. They include YouTube videos, which is nice too, but I'm not gonna watch those right now. This is 2 months ago. I'll take that one. No assist, dry conditions. Yeah. Let's see what they change. I just wanna. I'm not necessarily gonna just go look up a setup and apply it right away. I want to see exactly what they changed. Before I actually go through and apply all that stuff. So, not full screen. Come back. I mean, nobody's chatting, so I'll just come back to it later. If anything shows up. So front. What's cool about the website is if they don't change anything, it's a blank line through it. So let me see this for example. Dampening. They firmed that up by a lot. Very firm dampening, which, yeah, you want to keep the car glued to the ground. I bet you this ride height is low. It really is. This is only 2 months old, so it's not the same setup that I have loaded here. For this, with the weird, I mean, actually the alignments weren't that weird. I don't know what that was about. I really wish I'd made note there in the title of the the tuning. So, this guy does... This guy... what is this? Oh, no, no, back. Like, it's not specific to the stage. Hang on, this one, yeah, there's no... Everyone has a setup specific to the stage. I want an overall... I want an overall setup for these things, and I don't think the stages are that wildly different. I probably can get away with using one setup for a specific stage and use it across something different within that rally. The alignment, sending that, go, angle, everything negative. The rear, -3. This is in the opposite direction. They open up. They give us some toe out in the rear, which increases the vehicle rotation mid-corner. However, too much can cause oversteer. Actually, mid-corner rotation might be handy. It's probably better drive out of the corners, but give it toe in, which is what I had before. Added into positives. And you can't actually see the arrows on the graphic here on the right side. They will move along with the changes that you make. See, there's that, and I can make them wobble or whatever. Yeah, this is so out actually. Okay. Let me reset it. I don't really want to apply anything yet here. I'm just looking at what they changed, and apparently they tweaked everything in here. Braking's not a bad thing to look at, because I do struggle with braking in Japan, or I have historically done that. That is a stronger brake force, a more central... Yeah, as they put it at 64? Yeah, it's a more middle brake bias. And then the handbrake is stronger. Which I guess tells me that they used a handbrake for these runs. Okay. No, balancing the braking should help tons. I'm not going to lock up the fronts. Differential, yeah, they do a few tweaks there. Oh, we could just compare the numbers real quick. LSD driving lock. Oh, this is down to 9%? No, all right, so yeah, a low lock percentage will improve cornering at the cost of straight line stability. There's hardly any straight lines in Japan. That actually makes sense. I guess you do want that in the drive. You want that low? You put it very low. It's at the opposite end of what it defaults to, really. Interesting choices from this guy that submitted the setup. But I mean, this is the guy that put in 3 setups at all for this location and this car. So, yeah, I give him some credibility. Oh shit, I backed up too much. Right. Gotta select the car again. My location. There we go. Yeah, I'll just take the newest one. It's rated very well by other users here. You're supposed to be up so that the chat can come through.
Woohoo!
Sorry about that. Where was I? Dampening and springs. Springs. That's definitely what I want to look at. Okay. They slam it. A -18, which is pretty much okay. Yeah. Little. So 16 in the front and 18 in the rear. So higher than I had it in the front, lower than I had it in the rear. Whatever setup I made back in February. I can't remember that. Okay. But this is the type of stuff that creates stability, reduces body roll, and reduces suspension travel. Guess what, dude? You're not bumping too much in Japan. So these are changes that make sense to me. Stiffening the dampeners makes sense to me. Gearing, yeah, short as fuck. Okay. So actually reset this. I'll take this for now, the ride height. Shorten that all the way to, yeah, this is what I was doing anyway. I didn't need a guide for that. And we'll come back and see what all that does. Okay. Let's do another shakedown. Back to this. Back to that.
Easy time.
Luigi time. Shakedown, see how the car feels again. And then if we're headed in a good direction, I think I'll just go ahead and apply all the stuff from that guide.
Starts 120, 6 left. Good luck. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 120. Go. 6 left. Into 6 right. 30. 5 left short. Don't cut. 40. 6 right. Into 4 left short. Into 6 right. 6 left. 50. Brake. Right over crest. 60. 3 left sharp. And 1 right sharp. And 2 left short. And right over crest. 30. 3 left. Tightens. And square right. And 2 right short. 30.
Oh, I hit the brakes too hard.
2 left, half long tightens, twisty, 40, 1 right, keep in, and square left, opens, 30, caution, square left, and late 1 right.
Oh, it's so lucky that we bounced off of that.
Left, into 2
To the
right
left.
short, and 5 left, 30, 3 right, tightens, and 4 left, finish.
Again, a 101. Despite bumping into the guardrail, we only gained 0.5 of a second. That's what that is. Yeah, okay. Had to calculate that a little bit. Alright. So not bad despite, having a little encounter with the guardrail. Braking is my big issue here. So let's see. Yeah. I want to balance that out to 64%. Towards the rear. It's weird that the default's 78. That's very heavy towards the front, I think. %, should balance that out a bit. We're not using the handbrake. Although, just in case, fine. 28, 13 is there. And then the braking force, they make it higher. Which is probably necessary because you balance the braking bias towards the rear. So, what is it? Yep, that's it. All right. Cool. So yeah, I was already convinced enough to go ahead and go through these and actually, excuse me, apply them. -3. 323 here. Okay. Nope. Okay. That makes sense. Yeah. We're not. Yeah. It reduces straight line traction, but guess what? This is Japan. Yeah. You want more cornering. Yeah. Maybe this will be more nimble in the corners. We'll see how I handle that physically. And again, T23 there. Braking we already looked at. Differential. Driving lock is 9%. They really knocked this one down to the bottom half. The low lock percentage will improve cornering at the cost of straight line stability. Again, Japan, we're not gonna do straight line hardly anywhere. So this makes sense to me. So far, this setup makes sense to me. Braking LSD lock will be 36. So that's a little bit higher. Reload 6125. Okay, so knock it up a couple notches. All right, so the rear, here we go. This is one to pay attention to. It's 30. It's dead center for this one. 45 here. Under braking. Okay, yeah, you want braking. So it will improve traction under braking. It may induce understeer on corner entry. So if I see a lot of understeer happening, I might knock this down. Yeah, these two, I might knock them down. After later shakedowns. All right, that's that there. All right, only things left are dampening and springs. That is 4s across the board. They very much stiffened the dampeners. That's 24 there, 24 there, and 4 here. So they stiffen the fast, the slows, the rebounds, everything there. And then the springs, we didn't actually apply all of the settings here. So spring rate is 81. That's soft, isn't it? Or have I been reading? I've been reading these numbers wrong the entire time. Like, I thought going to the right on spring rate was stiffening the springs. And going to the left was softening the springs. This is the only one that has not made sense to me so far. A softer spring rate in the front. 6286. It's a very stiff, by my understanding, a very stiff front roll, anti-roll bar, which will resist roll but could lift the inside wheel and overload the outside wheel, resulting in a loss of traction. Doesn't matter. The whole goal is to plant all the tires onto the tarmac. So the default number for the rear spring rate is also very soft. We're softening it more and stiffening the anti-roll bar to the max, actually. Holy shit. All right. So that's that. Let me save this setup. So I know where I got it from at least. we'll do the next 3 shakedowns, see how we feel about it. And what was the one I wanted? Oh yeah, dampening. No, not dampening. Differential, yeah. If there was low, if I detected that my steering was weird, that's probably one I would look at. That's one I would definitely look at to see to like tune that out.
Oh yeah, looking good.
See, these overlays show up again. I did not see them show up on my last shakedown.
Starts 120, 6 left. Good luck.
All right.
Five, 4, 3, 2, 1, go. 120. 6 left. Into 6 right, 30. 5 left short, don't cut, 40. 6 right, into 4 left short, into 6 right, 6 left, 50. Brake, right over crest, 60. 3 left sharp, and 1 right sharp, and 2 left short. And
Should have
right
slowed
over
down more
crest,
there.
30. 3 left, tightens, and square right, and 2 right short, 30.
Just slow down there too.
2 left, half long tightens, twisty 40, 1 right, keep in, and square left, opens 30. Caution, square left, and late 1 right, half long, we have a puncture. Into slight left, into 2 right short, and 5 left, 30.
Remember, I didn't want to bring
3
a
right,
spare tire.
and 4 left. Finish.
Remember, I didn't want to bring a spare tire.
Oh, tough shot.
Okay. Yeah, that was all my driving style. Braking was awkward, and then that one where I broke a tire, I punctured a wheel. Just dumb stuff that I do while driving. I'm told a very safe driver in real life, but doing this in rallying and actually in GT3 racing and the Assetto Corsa, I'm dog shit at this. Absolute dog shit. Let's look at our repairs real quick. We're damaged the exhaust and the radiator, and that'll max out our time already. So let's not put more damage in this car before we actually start the rally. Oh yeah, I see more fault in my driving style than I do the tuning that I've just applied to this car. I see there's good things to come out of this setup. So I just have to actually execute it, you know? Execution is now on me. So yeah, let's do another shakedown just to keep practicing. Okay?
Let's go.
Now that I got the overlays back on, I've realized what was missing. You guys get to see more stuff on screen.
Starts 120, 6 left. Good luck.
All right.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go. 120. 6 left sharp, into 6 right, 30. 5 left short, don't cut, 40. 6 right, into 4 left short, into 6 right, 6 left, 50. Brake, right over crest, 60. 3 left sharp, and 1 right sharp, and 2 left short. And right over crest, 30. 3 left, tightens, and square right, and 2 right short, 30. 2 left, half long tightens, twisty, 40. 1 right, keep in. And square left, opens, 30. Caution, square left. And late 1 right, half long, into slight left, into 2 right short, and 5 left, 30. 3 right, tightens, and 4 left. Finish.
One minute. 7/10. All right, so we broke. We're into the 1 minute for the first sector. That's good. That's yeah. We're improving. I forget. Yeah, that's our first run there. 1, 2, 3, and then our very latest run. So we were getting progressively slower for a second there until we actually put down a clean run. So that confirms my suspicion of it being me is the problem. I am the issue here. All right. We want to just let's just clean out the last shakedown. I don't think I'm gonna tweak the car anymore. I feel the car is good. Now my braking and my steering have to come into harmony and make this magic happen.
I'm Luigi, number one.
And then maybe one day we can become number one, right? Right. So, last shakedown. We still have 2 other rallies to go. One in Estonia, one in...
Starts 120, 6 left.
I can't
Good
remember.
luck.
I just know the other one is Estonia. Anyway. Here we go.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1. 120. Go. 6 left. Into 6 right. 30. 5 left short. Don't cut. 40. 6 right. Into 4 left short. Into 6 right. 6 left sharp. 50. Brake. Right over crest. 60. 3 left sharp. And 1 right sharp. And 2 left short. And right over crest, 30, 3 left, tightens, and square right, and 2 right short, 30, 2 left, half long, tightens, twisty, 40, 1 right, keep in, and square left, opens, 30, option, square left, and late 1 right, half long, into
Just trying to open up the next turn.
right short,
A bit too much.
5 left, 30, 3 right, tightens, and 4 left. Finish.
That's a 101, 220, 55. That's our second fastest run. So despite that bump, still managed to do a good time out of all our shakedowns. We'll take it. We will take it. Do repairs? Oh my god, did I really just... Yeah, that bashed the exhaust. The radiator... Over 30 seconds over that. Ouch. Oof, ouch, owie. Let's back out of that. Look at it again. What does it recommend we do? Lights? Steering? Or just taking the standard repairs for the exhaust and radiator. Let me get rid of the lights. Oh, wait. We do need the lights. This is at dusk, and the next one's at night. Fuck the lights. Fuck the lights. Real men. Yeah. If you ever played Dirt Rally 2 where the lights could go out entirely, if you ever played Dirt Rally 2 in the rain, in the dark, in Wales, that was some scary shit, dude. The tense, like, it gave me such a tense vibe the entire time. It was the most scary shit I'd ever played, aside from, you know, your first night in Minecraft where there's creepers all over you. Yeah. Ooh. Okay. I do want to replace the exhaust. The radiator will stick to that one. Bodywork is fine. I don't care. Steering. Yikes. Did I really botched that? It's light damage. Let's do a quick fix. Bring that back down to that. I don't have... Yeah, okay, so there's still not enough time to bring in that type of repair. Let me get rid of that again. We're over by 30 seconds, so if I take this right now, I will start the rally with a penalty of 30 seconds. It's huge for these rallies, dude. Massive. I think I'll just go with the recommended ones. Standard repairs and replacing lights. There's room to fit some bodywork repairs? Sure. Just shove that in too. Why not? Get it as close as the limit we can get it to. Although, if it ends up being 40, I'll be mad. Because there's some RNG happening here with the standard fixes. 35. Look at that gap. I had plenty of time to add more shit. This is what I don't like about the standard fixes. They randomize the time to actually do it. There's so much more time I could have applied to other fixes. Now that you've repaired, can't do shit. Can't do anything more. So... if I do get a puncture and I take the spare tire, it's a 90-second penalty. And if I already said that 30 is massive, 90-second is astronomical, you might as well have retired. So I'm going to stick to no spare tire. We're going to swap in a fresh set of mediums. And go do this rally finally. Just finally.
You gotta believe.
Finally, you know, an hour and a half later, we're finally doing the rally. Actually, no, shakedowns always take me half an hour to do. So, still, it would have been a half hour after starting. We've lost an hour to, like, technical difficulties and other bullshit, you know? That's what happens. You. Paying the course now. We're committed. Here in Rally Japan... 2 stages, about 11 miles and some change, in the Ford Fiesta Rally 3. I think it's the Rally 3 spec. Doing our JRC placements. This is the league I'm playing under.
Good luck.
I very loosely call it a league. There's not much going on in that Discord, so not very active it looks like, but there's players. Anyway, let's go.
5, 4,
It happens.
3, 2, 1, go. 120. 6 left, into 6 right, 30. 5 left short, don't cut, 40. 6 right, into 4 left short, into 6 right, 6 left, 50. Brake, right over crest, 60. 3 left sharp, and 1 right sharp, and 2 left short.
Down way too much.
Crest, 30, 3 left, tightens, and square right, and 2 right short, 30. 2 left, half long tightens, twisty, 40. 1 right, keep in, and square left, opens, 30. Caution, square left, and late 1 right, half long, into slight left, into 2 right short, and 5 left, 30. 3 right, tightens, and 4 left, and 5 right, keep in, 30. 1 right, half long, opens, 40. Caution, late 1 left, and 3 left, into 4 right, and sudden square right, into slight left, slight right, into 3 left short, and 4 right, into 3 left, half long, keep in, into slight right, slight left, 30, 4 left sharp, and 2 right, half long, and 6 left, and 3 right short, and square left, 30, 3 right, tightens, and 2 left, 60. 3 left, keep in, and 2 left, opens, 40. 4 right, 30. 4 left, keep in, 50, brake, 3 right, tightens, and 2 left, long tightens, and 2 right, into 1 left, and 1 right short, 40, 2 right, opens half long, 30, 5 right over crest, tightens 4, and 2 left, opens 30, 5 right, 50, 1 left sharp, 50, late 1 right, half long,
Didn't slow down enough. Oh, they reset me.
50,
God, I wasn't terminal.
4 left short, and 4 right, sharp over crest, into 3 left, keep in, and 1 right, 30, late 1 left, long, and slight left, 70, brake, 6 right, long, tightens 2, opens, 40, 5 right over crest, 40, 3 left, opens and tightens, 2 left, 30, 4 right short, into 4 left, don't cut, 40, 2 right, tightens, 40, 2 right, and 1 left, and 2 right short, 50, 2 right, 50, option, 4 left, unseen, into 3 right short, into 6 left, into slide right, into square left, half long, 30, square right, 30, 1 left short, cut, 30, 2 left short, into 2 right, don't cut, 30, 1 left, opens, 40, 4 right, tightens, into 2 left, tightens 1, into slight right, 40, 1 right, 40, 2 left, 30, 1 right short, 50, 2 left, tightens, and 2 right short, into 5 left, and 6 right over crest, keep in, 40, 1 right, opens very long, into 5 right, and 3 left, keep in, 80, unseen, 1 left, 40, 5 right, opens, 100, crest, into early 6 right, slowing, 40, 2 left, tightens, 70, late 2 right, long, tightens, 30, 6 left, 50, caution, 6 right, 30, 1 left, long, and left over crest, 30, early 2 right, 30, and 1 right, keep in, 50, late 1 left, keep in, 30, 3 left, don't cut, and 3 right sharp, into early 4 left, 30, 2 right, cut, and 3 left, and 5 right, opens over crest, brake, into square right, half long tightens, 40, 1 left, very long, pass junction, and 2 right, opens, keep in, 50, brake, 6 left, into 3 right, into 1 left short, 70, late 3 left,
So
half
glad
long
the
tightens,
frame rate's holding up.
1 right, 40, brake, 5 right, and 1 left, and 1 right, half long, 30, brake, slight right, 40, 1 left, long, 40, caution, late 1 right, opens, 40, 5 left short, 40, 3 left sharp, and 1 right, keep in, 40, 2 left, 70, 4 left, tightens, 40, 1 right, long, 70, 6 left, 50, 5
Save
right,
that.
into 3 left sharp, 30, caution, 5 right, long, and 2 right, half long, through junction, 40, 3 left, keep in, 30,
Oh boy.
6 left, slowing, 40, turn, 1 left, 30, 6 right, 6 left. And slight right, 50. Slowing, 5 left short, into 5 right, into 4 left short, into 2 right, tightens, and 5 left, 60. Turn spare right. 40, 5 left. And slight right, slowing, 110. Turn 1 right, don't cut, into 5 left, 70. 5 left, 80. Small crest, slowing, 50, 2 left, keep in, 30, 3 right, tightens, and turn square left. 120. Bridge, 40, turn square right, widens, 60. Slight right, 50. Slight left, very long. Tighten 6, and house, long, 60. 3 right, 50. 5 right, opens. Over finish, 150 to stop. Okay, that's an 8 minute, 15.5.
Very sloppy at the end there. I wish I cleaned that up, but that's the placement done for that first loop.
You gotta believe.
This is in 12th place. All right. $35 of penalties for this guy. Actually, I do recognize his name. I've seen this guy on Twitch. Wow, 35 seconds of penalties there. Oof. All right, and at the top, I like seeing this good mixture of flags here. Like, there's everybody. I like seeing this, and that's the beauty of clubs. You know, it doesn't matter what time zone you're in. You do it when you get time to do stuff, and asynchronous, I think is what it's called. You just do your rally whenever. So, I'm not gonna. I mean, I guess I was faster in the third split. Somehow. Wow, looking at all the adjacent times here. No, I was pretty slow relative to these guys up here at third split. Bit of an yeah, okay. Maybe not so much of an anomaly. You're either a minute in the third split or you're a minute 10. Oh, yeah, I don't pay too much attention to splits. I really only compared the ones like immediately next to me. And it's fine. So, next stage.
We did it!
We'll bring back the music if I can. I don't know why it keeps disappearing. It's so dumb. But anyway. The overlay is still there. Interesting. It's supposed to disappear when the game isn't... Oh, there we go. Spoke too soon. So this is a nighttime rally for the second stage.
Right,
I already missed the name.
30,
Doesn't
good
matter.
luck.
1 right to begin with. Good luck, says QPie from the co-driver.
Five, 4, 3, 2, 1, go. Lead 1 right, half long, 30. 5 left, extra long. And 2 left, tightens. And 2 right, 400.
This is probably the longest straights we'll see in this rally.
Lead 5 right, half long, 40. 6 left, half long.
It's a good call to
Into crest.
shorten the
50,
gears.
5 left.
It didn't hit the
half
top
long, tightens
end of
turn,
that.
60. Right over small crest, 80. Slight left, long, 110. Slight right, 140, slowing. slight left, narrows, and 1 right short, and 2 left, tightens, into 3 right, 3 left short, 40. 4
There we
right,
go.
half long, tightens to 90. Late 1 left, long, 80. 3 right over crest, long, 70. 5 right short, don't cut, 120. Caution, 4 right over crest, 30. 1 left, half long, and 4 right, opens half long, 80. Slight right, slowing, 40. 6 right short, 30. Hairpin left, opens, and acute hairpin right, 30.
Hairpin
6
left.
right, 50. 6 right over crest, slowing, 30. 1 left, very long, tightens, 40. Lead 1 right, half long, tightens, and 1 left short, and 5 right, brake. And square left, half long, 50. Slight left, 40. 5 right short, keep in, slowing, and 6 right, 30, 2 right, and left over crest, into 2 left. And square right, half long, and 4 left. Into 4 right, opens long, 30. Caution, 5 left, into 6 right, into 4 left, and crest, 40. 2 left, and 4 right, tightens, 40. 3 left, small cut, 30. 4 left, half long, 30. Unseen, 3 right, very long, 60. 5 left short, keep in, and 5 left, half long, tightens, into 4 right, half long, 40. 3 left, 30. Small crest, 40. 2 right, tightens, keep in, and 6 left, 40. 4 left, half long, and slight left, caution, into right over crest, 30. Late 1 right, and 6 left, 40. 5 right, tightens, 30. 5 left, and 3 right sharp, into 6 left. And 2 right, tightens, and 4 left, opens and tightens. 2 left, 70. Caution, crest, into slight right, tightens 1, and late 1 left, half long, opens, 30. 6 right short, and 5 left short, and 4 right, 80. Slight left, slowing, and 6 right, 6 left, into 2 right short, into 4 left, and 3 right, half long, 60. 5 right, half long, and 3 left, tightens, and 5 right. And 6 left, 6 right, 50, slowing, 5 right short, into slight left, 30, 2 left, half long, and 1 right, tightens, keep in, into 6 left short, 40, 6 left, 30, 2 left, half long, 90. 3 right short, into 4 left, half long, tightens, and 6 right, widens, 60, over finish, into slight left, and 2 right. Okay, that's a 4 minute, 48.7.
Oh, much cleaner. We'll see how fast that was, but that was definitely cleaner. I like that run. 4:48 is the time. Good, good. Let's see how that compares. There may be some slow parts there. Wow. There we go. 7th place, 7th position for this one. And we don't see... Oh, okay. So Commander Swede just above me. Whoa, okay. All right. Yeah. 8th place overall. Yeah. With a difference of 1 minute, 10 seconds later. 42 seconds for myself. Yeah, no, I guess look, I'm in the middle of the leaderboard. Therefore, I'm probably exactly in the placement that I need to be in. I'm happy with this result. Very good stuff. Very good stuff.
Wowie!
All right. And head back to the main menu and pick the next placement rally. Placement rally 2. And then we still have to do placement rally 3. Good, good, good. All right, cool. So let's get the music going back again. And actually take a break here and do a stretch. I gotta check the laundry anyway.
Oh yeah, looking good.
So yeah, hang tight, folks. We'll be right back. And resume rallying in just a minute.
Oh.
Oh goodness.
Yeah.
What?
I wonder if you could run up to the airport and then just like watch it. It did the cutscene walking into the airport, didn't it? Here it comes. There he is, and there he goes, and he's back.
Why?
That's super weird.
It just has to glow. Once you go in, you never come out.
Yeah. Oh.
Oh wow.
Oh, there it goes. Okay. Wow. Box. I kind of dodged, expecting another one. Oh, please, 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 please. Yo, we did. Hell yes. Look at that win. From behind. We'll take that. Yes. Win from. Do you not see the hole? Okay, there you go.
I couldn't see the hole at first, I will not lie.
Alright.
The little bastards, Jesus. You're everywhere.
I want to use grenades to explode them, but we're too close range.
These cables must be connected to a master fuse box somewhere. Follow them. They should lead the way out.
That's a big chest. Is that a grenade?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, our automatic sugarcane farm has already been emptied. I don't know when we did that.
Okay, here we go.
Oh, did you? Oh.
I did the stupid.
Well.
Oh.
Probably a good enough time to end the stream then, anyways. Oh no, I can't die yet. Oh, you're a weaponsmith that's never been traded with. Don't care then. You need to get off this cliff. There you go.
I just saw
Oh yeah.
What? I didn't do anything.
Super rude.
I was nudging him in.
Unbelievable.
They need to learn.
They need to learn.
Whoa. That's the blue shell.
Thanks.
Yeah, buddy. Oh no.
Wait, let it roll, let it roll.
Oh my god, that actually worked. Did you see me? Oh.
Save that replay.
Oh my god, yes.
No, in this room.
Oh, hot tourist destination.
No, just go. No, just go. No, just go
Oh.
in the room.
Oh, there
Look,
it is.
it's right there.
Yeah. Dude, I was more worried about the Zombo.
That's so cool.
Are you hearing the
Okay.
sound too?
Yes.
Yes.
That's so dope.
Okay, that
Wait a minute, where did the map room go? Drivers, what have you done? Not here. Not here. Oh shit! Ah! Are you fucking kidding me? What? There was supposed to be a bathroom! Why was there a creeper there? I'm literally crying! What the fuck? I could sit on one of those and fly over. Let's test it. Oh, I like that. That rose up with quite a bit of force behind it. I like that. Alright. If I can go overboard, why not? Alright. Let's get something that swings downward. There we go. Oh, I didn't even need to bring this across. I didn't need to do it. There's nothing to set it down on. Well, here's your dumb ball anyway. Did anyone else see that? Yep. There's a howlet, and then just the whole model just blipped into. Hello! CBG with that raid, my guy! Good shit, dude. Good timing. Just came back from that break. Excellent stuff, my guy. Oh, that's what that is. Excellent. Wow, welcome in, Raiders. Hello, everybody. Thank you to CBJ for that. And shout out to CBJ if you're not already following. Give him a follow right now. It's good shit over there on that side of Twitch over there on the weekends. Yes, everybody, welcome in. Thank you. We want to hit that follow button because this stream is more fun with more viewers. You know that's true. Check out the channel points section and thank you. Stopping by from Cheeseburger Jesus stream. Again, shout out to you, my dude. Yeah, we're doing rally placements. Placements for a rallying league that I just joined a month ago. They're starting up their next season of rallying, and I'm gonna place. I'm addicted to the waifus. I've seen, dude. You're playing. What was it? ZZZ or whatever the shortened thing is. Did it say in the shout out? Did not say Shark Girl. I saw you play the Shark Girl. Yeah, you were chumming the waters and destroying whatever thing you were fighting up against. Yeah, I've been lurking there, dude.
I did it!
It's good stuff, man. Yeah, that looks like a fun game for sinking time into. Like any game is good for sinking time into. I guess you gotta, yeah. Love runs like a roguelike. Okay, you know what? I think I'll pass that along to Kiwi Pie, see what she thinks of that type of game. Yeah. Yeah. Waifus. Can't argue with that, my guy.
Oh, yeah!
Can't argue with waifus at all. That's right. Oh, here we go. Yes, sir. Next up for this rallying league, we're doing our placements. Oh, for fuck's sake, it crashed again. Wow. Whoa. a third crash today since 1.9 update. Anywho, yeah, it's like the map. You can draw cards to alter and buff the run, kind of like Hades and stuff. Hey, yeah, no, that is exactly the type of stuff that Kiwi might be interested in. Bump that up as the chat gets moving. Yeah, um, yeah, I'll look into that and pass it along. It is free to play, right? Pretty sure. Oh wait, yeah, free to play. Excellent. I'd like to hear that. That's it. Yeah, that was my next thought coming through my brain. It's like I've read this off of your Discord, and I was gonna relay it to the rest of the viewers. Yeah, the Genshin Impact people. Hell yeah. Lots of pulls, little mini, yeah, leveling things. Oh my god. Yeah, no, I can definitely see the addiction happening to certain people there, certain types. Helped along, of course, by the wife.
Press the enter key to start.
Alright. Get back into that game again for the 4th time today. Signed up way early to the pre-order things and got a ton of free. Oh, look at that! Nice. Excellent. Is there any multiplayer at all? I haven't seen you beg people to get into that. Whoops, that's the wrong button. Oh, okay. Yeah, no, they might be more like grindy to the point where you want to spend money, huh? Yeah, I've seen that a lot in mobile games. Or at least a complaint of that in mobile games. I stopped playing mobile games a long time ago. Really, Pokemon Go was the only thing I really played anyway. Oh, man. Alright, cool. So we're into Italy. Sardinia. It's pronounced Sardinia, but there's no I's in that name. As you may notice, the Italians, they'd be weird. Oh, no. Spam through so much dialogue. Dude. Yeah. They want to keep you locked in, I guess. Not a bad thing. You're into that stuff. Alright. Let's get the music getting back again. Okay, cool. So another 5 shakedowns, new rally, new setup for the car. I'm just gonna go straight to looking for setups on this car in Italy. Junior WRC in Sardinia. Oh, beautiful. Months ago, I know. Zero ratings in it though, so maybe look at the other ones first. Stages. Hey, here we go. I like when they say all stages. That's good. And hey, yeah, I've seen you stream that game every weekend, more or less. Yeah, I'm working there too. Yeah, I'll pass that along to Kiwi for sure. Let's see the comments here. Not a bad tune. I'll update it soon. Okay. The owner's comment. Very good. Easy to drive. Easy to save. Bravo. Still garbage. Good steering response, but when the tuning the Hey. Created 6 months ago, updated 4 months ago. Right. That's something to keep in mind. Alright. Why does it reset the filters every time I come back? Actually, I do want to look at what stages we're going to go through. We got 3 stages this time. Oh. See, I know Spanish, but Italian's language is a little, just like, little off to the edge where I will have no idea what Casa Cuenta is, or Lady Cheddar? Lady Cheddar? No idea what that is. Maybe it's lit cheddar. Who knows? The Italians, man, they weird. Weird.
Oh yeah!
This is one of those matches. This one, I'll take this setup. And set up for that one. Let's see what the alignment is. Yeah. So last. This is the same author as the last rally stage. So that was really good. I'm just gonna copy this verbatim right now because it was that good. We're just gonna do this verbatim. Yeah, it was legit good. Actually, that stays default. 5. A little bit to the rear, and we make the handbrake a lot stronger. So this, because this is a gravel rally, I do plan on using the handbrake a bit more here than I do in the asphalt rally that we just did in Japan. Just finished up Japan. One, just a slight difference there, a bigger difference there. It was such a good setup for this thing. So yeah, I'm very confident just copying this verbatim. Oh, 50% lock on the drive. High lock percentage will improve straight line traction, although it may induce understeer, particularly in low grip conditions. This is gravel. It's very loose gravel. I know it to be some loose conditions and low grip conditions. So understeer, I guess we'll just have to see what this shakedown does, and I might come back to tweak this particular one. I don't like it in the shakedown. Maxing that one out as well, and maxing this one too. Holy crap. Right, preload, it will partially lock the differential when little or no torque is applied. Huh. Having it too high may induce understeer, so we're going to be fighting understeer in the rear for this setup. And if we fight it way too much, maybe I'll have to... SG. Indeed, dude. Gearing. Just remembered, I didn't change the gearing at all. But I did change the final drive. I'm not going to go through every single one of these. He lowers this all the way to the bottom again. And that's the rule of thumb I've seen across all the entire game, is that you want to start your baseline from 0.1, and then if you need longer gears, you just make it longer as needed. In Japan, we were turning such tight turns at very low speed anyways. Is like, you want the acceleration rather than the top speed. Alright, dampening. This one again, actually soft. .91. 2. 1. Alright, so these are soft and dampeners, which makes sense. This is a bumpier ride through Italy. Ride height of 42, just add higher than default by 2 millimeters. That's nothing really. That's the default spring rate. Look at that. Okay. And the anti-roll is stiffened. This is counterintuitive to what I would think would normally happen with anti-roll bars, but like I said, I like the setup from Japan so much that I fully trust whatever this is. This is setting me up. Cool. So that's that. Let's go ahead and save it. Oh, because of the surface? Is that why they... Wait. Why is Japan not showing up here? Alright. I already immediately forgot how to spell it. Let's just do that. We got one, yeah. I don't know why I typed in the whole URL. We got one for Scandia, Finland. I've been here plenty of times for other places. Alright. Over to OBS. Yo, I don't know what. Yeah, the car stuff. Yeah, no, the car stuff is above my head too. That's why I haven't followed a guide for this. The stream is so laid back and cool coloring. Hell yeah. You just missed your pen. Yeah, lucky dice.
Oh yeah.
Alright. If we get lucky in Italy here through this next 3 stages, let's take a look at the mileage that we're going to be putting into this car. Only one service area. Medium gravel, light gravel, that's fine. Some asphalt, actually a little bit of asphalt here peppered in. It's a good mixture, this Italian rally. So sunrise, morning, and afternoon. This will take all day through, let's quickly do some math. 4, 8, and 8, 16, and some change mile, maybe 17. We'll call it 17 miles. Let's take a look at our tires. Since we only have one service area, we may want to take the medium compound here. And yeah, I'll stick to the one spare tire. Maybe saves our ass at some point. Okay. Let's see how this feels with the shakedown. Like I said, we'll look at the rear. One commenter did say we want to look out at the rear stepping out, so we'll see how this does. It should be fun. I love gravel rallies.
5 right, 70, good luck.
Here we go.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go. 5 right short, 70. Crest, slowing, 60. 6 right, long, tightens 3. And turn 1 right, widens, 40. Hairpin left, 60.
Hell yeah, that was a good slide.
Sharp, jump, and crest into sudden hairpin right, 110.
Oh, I like this. I like this a lot already.
Left, half long, tightens 1. 90, slowing. 5 right short, into hairpin right. 130. Four left over crest, opens and tightens. Square left. 40. 6 right over crest, 40.
Yeah, this feels great.
60.
God, I love hooning the Fiesta.
4 right, 30. 1 left, long, onto tarmac. 180.
Oh, the sun's in my face. Shit.
Finish.
We go 1 minute 30 for the first sector. Hell yeah. Yes, doing GPSing. No, there's a physical co-driver in rally driving. There's a person next to the driver, called the co-driver, and they're reading off directions essentially. A 4 left. Let's start with the extremes, not the middle. So like a left 1, yeah, human GPS indeed.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, like a left 1 is essentially there's tighter turns because then she'll call it hairpins. But yeah, it's like a 90-degree rotation. It's based off how far you're rotating your steering wheel left or right. So a 1 is a 90-degree rotation to the left, and then a 6, a left 6 is going to be like 5-degree rotation. It's very slight. It's almost a straight line, and I'll treat it as such and go flat out through it. Yeah, setup was beautiful, beautiful setup from this guy on this random ass website. and the car handled perfect. I love the Fiesta Rally3 spec, especially in gravel. God, that was fun. So let's go. I mean, I want to do all 5 shakedowns just for fun, even though I feel comfortable enough to just start the rally. But I like getting that practice in. Let's just go again.
Starts 5 right, 70, good luck. 5,
Reading off of actual paper.
3, 2, 1, go. 5 right short, 70.
Yeah.
Crest, slowing, 60. 6 right, long, tightens 3, and turn 1 right, widens, 40. Hairpin left,
Didn't even have to have the
60.
hang the handbrake on that.
Sharp, jump and crest into sudden hairpin right. 110.
Rifto!
4 left, half long, tightens 1. 90, slowing. 5 right short, into hairpin right. 130.
Yeah, man, that skybox is pretty.
Tightens, square left. 40. 6 right over crest. 40. Crest.
The rear kicks out beautifully.
Jump into 4 right. 30. 1 left. Long. Onto tarmac. 180.
And all of a sudden, there's grip
Finish.
on the asphalt. Yo, 129 through that. God, that's so much fun. Yeah, dude. Now that the hood is down, you can see the graphic right there. Yeah, that's with the built-in livery editor, which is frankly and honestly a big pain in the ass to work with. So these are shapes I had to like cobble together, you know, like different. I had to cobble together the triangles, the shield shapes, and the rhombuses, and skew things around, and yeah. Thank the Lord that Assetto Corsa takes just PNG that you can do in Photoshop and just slap whatever graphic you want on there. No, this had to be done in the game with the gamepad. Man, pain in the ass, but so proud of this fucking livery here that I made for the Fiesta. Let's just keep going again. Hello, fellow Italians.
Oh, yeah.
Starts 5 right. 70. Good luck.
Let's see, it's kind of dark. That's not dark. Sunrise. Early in the morning. We start
5,
early.
4, 3, 2, 1, go. 5 right short, 70. Crest, slowing, 60. 6 right, long, tightens 3. And turn 1 right, widens, 40. Hairpin left, 60.
Oh, I love sliding this thing, dude.
Sharp, jump and crest into sudden hairpin right. 110. Four left, half long, tightens 1. 90, slowing.
A little wider than I wanted to do there. It's fine. It's still fun.
130. Four left over crest, opens and tightens. Square left. 40. 6 right over crest. 40. Crest. 60. Jump into 4 right. 30. 1 left. Long onto tarmac. 180.
Oh, it's so jarring to go from gravel to asphalt. 130? Oh, 127. That's good. That's getting better. Our fastest run so far by 2.25 seconds, more or less. Ah, it's so much fun. All right, I think yeah. I mean, I'm pretty happy with the setup here so far. I'm not. I mean, it's fun. I could do the last 2 shakedowns. Nothing to repair here. That's beautiful. Let's see the tires. I think they're recommending softs. For the distances that we're going total, I think I am going to stick to medium. Yeah. So it's a slower tire choice that I'm making, but it'll last me longer. It'll degrade slower throughout the rally. And this is, like I said, 16 miles more or less. Maybe I think we said 17. And then we have 1 spare tire. Yeah. Yeah, let's go ahead and swap into tires. A fresh set of tires. No more shakedowns due. Let's do it for real.
Bingo! Ho 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 ho!
Yeah, hopefully the overlay is like showing y'all good information. Sardegna. Swear to God, I've heard this in broadcasts before. The actual sport. It's pronounced Sardinia. Yeah. I turn on the lights, you'll see a little spotlight show up in the
5 right,
driver's
70,
head.
good luck.
Light read at night. I don't need the headlights. All right, for real this time in Italy.
Here we go.
Here we go, indeed.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go. 5 right short, 70. Crest, slowing, 60. 6 right, long, tightens 3. And turn 1 right, widens, 40. Hairpin left, 60.
On that power and go.
Crest into sudden hairpin right, 110. 4 left, half long, tightens 1. 90, slowing. 5 right short, into hairpin right. 130. 4 left over crest, opens and tightens, square left. 40. 6 right over crest, 40, crest, 60, jump, into 4 right, 30, 1 left, long, onto tarmac, 180. Right over crest, 100.
Ooh, all right.
Long crest, 120.
The rest of the rally.
Crest, 70. Early 5 right, over crest, into 4 left, keep in, 120. Left over crest, slowing, 100. Turn hairpin right, onto gravel, and slide right, 40. 4 left.
Almost overshot this. Let's go. All right.
Into 4 right, into 3 left.
I thought it was just beyond those signs, but it was before.
Turn, unseen, 1 left, 100.
The sun's in the eyes directly.
Into 5 right, 30. 5 right, 70. 6 right, 50. 5 right short, into 6 left, slowing, 70. 5 left over crest, into 2 right short, 100. 5 left over crest, don't cut, 70. Slight right, 60. Left over crest, into slight right over crest, 140, slowing. Crest, into slight left, then slight right. And square left, into turn 1 right. Into 6 left over crest.
That guy for red is fine.
Crest, into 3 left short, and crest, 50, hairpin right. And slight left. Tighten square, tightens. And square right short. Into 5 left, opens. Into crest.
A little sloppy there.
Tightens. And 3 right short. Into late square left, 60. Crest. And slight left, 100. 6 right over crest, into slight left, 130. 5 left, slowing, 70. 3 right, tightens, into 2 left short, 30. Crest, 80, slowing. Dip.
Oh.
Left over bump, into 5 right short, into slight left over crest, 70. Right over crest, slowing, 40, 2 right, into 1 left short, and 2 left short. Into 4 right.
Oh.
Into 6 left.
Yeah, this is where Sardinia gets technical.
Tighten square, into left over crest, 30. Late 2 left, and 2 right short, into 3 left over crest. Into 5 right. Into 4 left.
There's the wipe I needed.
And 4 left short, into 4 right, opens, 50, slight right, into slight left over crest, opens long, tightens 3, into slight right, into 4 left, into square right, and 6 left. Long crest, into sudden 2 left, 70. Crest, slowing, 60. 6 right, tightens 2, 30, 2 left, half long, 50. Slight right over crest, half long. And 3 left, tightens, into slight right, half long. Into crest, slight right, over finish, to stop. Okay, that's a 5-minute.
Fuck yeah.
0.3.
Oh, that felt good. I love Italy. God, it's so good. Hello, Mental Gen. That's a dirty car indeed.
Ouija time!
Easy time. Oh, man. 12th place over here in Italy. A little on the slow side, I think. Wow, I guess I could have pushed more. I took that pretty conservatively, it seems. Alright. Alright. Well. I'm not up mad with that time. That was just a fun rally to go through. Keep focusing on the pixelated bush. Yeah. Oh my god. Yeah. Bit off the nose of the car there. What a fun intro to the rally. What a cool little car too. I love the Fiesta. And onto the tarmac road. Out of here. Top speed through that. They're picking off some dust from the bumpers. I knew it was coming up. Oh, that's a different turn. Okay. Here's where I botched the entry back onto the gravel. A little far with that braking. Restart the engine, put it back into gear. Going again.
Oh, yeah!
Yeah. Sending it sideways there. I love doing that in the gravel, man. I love it. Oh, the overlay is kind of just stuck, huh? That's funny. It's not taking actual telemetry from the replay. Oh well. Two more stages to go here in Italy. Let's again send that Fiesta sideways. Call it a sideways Fiesta.
Oh, yeah!
Ah. I love starting with a dirty car too.
Starts 6
Kind of
left.
overcast.
Right. Good
It's
luck.
not gonna rain, is it? We're not expecting rain here. I don't think. It could start raining midway through the rally.
5, 4, 3,
Really problematic.
2,
Wowzer, you're the best!
go. 6 left.
Try.
Into 4 right short. 40. 1 right. And crest. And 3 left. Opens long. 80. 3 right short. Over crest. 70. Caution. 6 right. Tightens 4 over crest. Into 3 left sharp. 30. 3 right over crest, 30, turn hairpin left, 150. Six right short, into 6 left, slowing, into 6 right over crest, 40, left over crest, into turn 2 right, 50, turn acute hairpin left,
Other way, other way. Here we go.
40, turn 2 right, tightens. And left over crest, 50. Left over crest, into 5 right short, don't cut, into left over crest, 40, 5 left, half long. And 4 right short, through dip, 30, crest, so then 1 left, into hairpin right, short, and slight left, 40. 3
Hell
left
yeah.
over crest, don't cut, 70. 3 right, half long, opens. And left over crest. And crest, 60.
On up the hill. Up the hill.
1 left short. And slight right. Tightens 2. Into 2 left sharp. And crest. Into slight right, long. Into right over crest. Into 6 left, at dip. And 4 left sharp. 70. 6 right, very long. Tightens 5 over crest. And 4 left short, don't cut, 60. Jump. Into slight left, long, slowing. 30, 2 right, short over crest. And 4 left short, into 5 right short, 50. 5 right. And slight left over crest, very long. Into slight right, long, brake, 40, 1 left short, and 4 right over crest, very long. And 6 left sharp, into left over crest, into slight right, 30. 6 left over crest, 50. Bump. Into 5 left, 90, slowing. Turn, lead square left. Opens into 6 left and slight right over crest, 60.
Wide, that rock? Okay, we're good.
short, over crest, into slight left, long. Tightens 5, over bump, slowing, and 1 right short, and slide right, into 1 left short.
Oh boy, it's so much more iffy when you're going downhill and gravity's helping you go downhill.
Slight left, 30. Slowing, 5 left, into crest, 30. 1 left, 40. Crest, sudden 5 left. Into slide right, 50. Lead 1 right. And slide left, 40. Caution, lead 5 right, tightens over crest, 90. Slight left, option, right over bump, into slight left, tightens 1, short, 60. Left over bump, and 4 left, opens long.
Any little bump can just send you off the cliff.
And late 6 right, over crest, into slight left, slowing, 40. 1 right, opens, 30. Caution, late 1 left, and 5 right, into crest. Sudden spare right, into 6 left. Into 6 right over crest, 30. 3 right short, over crest, 30. 4 left, through dip, 30. Crest, into 5 left, 40. 6 right, tightens over crest, 50. Slowing, 6 left sharp, and sudden 2 right, over crest, 30. 2 left. And 4 right short, over crest, and 2 left, 50. Slide right, over crest, 50. Slowing, 6 left, tightens, into slide right, and 4 right, into 3 left short, 50, 2 left, 100. Over finish, hairpin right to stop. Okay, that's a 5 minute, 23.3.
Oh boy. Again, another fun one here. Oh. 523. Where's that gonna put me in the leaderboard? Oh boy. Upper half? Top 10. Top 10, baby. My god. Commander Swede. Look at that. This guy's all over the place too. He's either at the bottom or at the top. Seagull pretty consistently. That's the name that stands out to me too. Seen that pretty consistently in the upper half as well. I mean, top 10, but there's only 16 racers, so yeah, it is one of the slower times, unfortunately. 5 minutes, 2 seconds from the Frenchman here. That puts me 21 seconds behind. I'm still pretty pleased with that, honestly. Even minutes behind, but 21 seconds, I like, yeah, this was a good rally for me, too. Just technical enough. Just technical enough to keep me on my toes, man. If I cleaned that up, that hairpin would have been way nicer, too. I love that you can see the tail lights light up the dust in the back. And this is an island off of Italy. This is a very beautiful place. I'm really impressed. A little tepid there, I noticed. I wonder what was the call there from the co-driver that made me ease off the gas and into the brakes a bit there. Yeah, I am trying to survive these things too. Trying to get the car back in one piece is the biggest goal of them. the hill. Yeah, this is a really crazy rally stage. I like it a lot. So we can get a good shot of car to put on social or just post later. Let's pull it back a tad. Oh, now there's dust in the engine. Alright, find a different angle. Oh, did you see that? Went off onto 3 wheels here, just barely. That's a good shot. Sent it sideways just a bit wide. Of course, it came back onto the road, no problem. Onto 3 wheels, still saving it, yeah. There we go. That's a good representation. The island with the radio tower. With the radio tower being there, that's probably the highest elevation point of this stage. And a little wide there. Just giving a little love tap to the rocks there on the side. Yeah, that's the type of stuff I mean that I need to clean up my racecraft when I'm doing these racing simulation games. Is following the race line a bit tighter. On to the next stage. Last one for Italy.
Wowzer, you the best.
Still trying, Luigi. We're still trying, my guy. The overlay used to disappear as soon as the rally was done, so might have to look into any updates for the rally. Overlay that's on the bottom third. Lower third is what they call it. That's
square right, left over crest. Good luck.
Square right.
5, 4,
Here we go.
3, 2, 1, go. Square right into left over crest. 80. 3 right, keep in.
Ah, cheeseburger go brr.
Left. Tightens. 40. Slight right. And left over jump. 60. 5 right over crest. 60. 6 left over crest, slowing, and 3 right short, 50. Slight left over crest, 70, slowing. Caution, 1 left over crest, 60. Right over crest.
Oh, a little wide.
30.
Okay.
3 right, tightens, 40. 4 left over crest, 80. 6 right short, over crest, 60, 4 left, keep in, and 6 right, through dip, 50, slowing, crest, 40, 1 left, 50, 6 right, extra long, caution, into 2 right short, into 5 left, caution, tightens over crest, into 6
Listen for those
right,
caution calls.
3 right sharp, keep in, into 5 left over crest. Brake and slide right, into 3 left sharp, cut and crest, into 6 right, opens and tightens, 3 right, tightens, into turn 1 left, 50. Slide left, into crest, 30, 5 right short, and slide right, 50. Slight right over crest, 100. 4 left, half long, 30. Right over crest, 60. Crest, slowing, 80. 4 left short, cut over crest, into 4 right, into slight left. And crest, 130. Small crest, slowing, 100. Late, 3 left over crest, 30. 1 right short. into slight left, opens long, and slight right, half long, and 2 left short, cut into 3 right, 70. 6 left over crest, tightens, into slight right, 50. Option, slight right, into 6 left over crest, 70, 4 right sharp, into slight left and crest, into 5 right short, 170. 3 left, small cut, 30, 6 right, slowing, 50. 2 right short, into square left, half long, and square right. Into 6 left, 40.
Nice.
4 right, into slight left, 30, 4 left short. Into 3 right, 40. Slight right over crest. Into 6 left, into slight right, slowing, 70. 3 right, keep in, 50. Crest, 40. 6 left short, 60. Caution, crest, 30. 3 right sharp, small cut, 50. Slight left over crest, tightens. Into 5 right, opens, 50. Crest, slowing, into 6 right, into slight left, and turn acute hairpin right. Into left over crest. And 6 left, long, tightens, 40. Caution, 3 left, tightens, into 4 right, into 1 left, opens, 30. 6 right short, over crest, and 4 left, 60. Late square right, opens, and 6 right, tightens, into sudden 1 left, 110. 5 left short.
There we go. See it.
Into 4 left. And late 2 right. And 2 left, tightens, 30.
Put on a little bit too much there.
Opens, into crest, slowing, 30. Hairpin left, on seat. 80 over crest. Into 3 right, half long. Into slight left over crest, long, slowing. Into crest, sudden slight left, 40, unseen, 2 right sharp. Into slight left. Into crest, 40. Late 3 right, half long, 30, 1 left over crest, opens, 80. Crest, 60. 3 right, opens, into crest, caution, into 5 right. Into 1 left, tightens, into 4 right sharp, into slight left.
Oh, the rear. Oh, the rear. Okay.
Into 4 right, opens, 80.
This is fine.
Crest.
On the road, we're good.
Left. And slight left, tightens 4, short, into 5 right, opens over crest, 30. Short, 4 right, 4 left over crest, and 3 right over crest. Into 3 left short, and 1 right short, 40. Caution, square left over crest, opens half long. And 6 right, 6 left, into 2 right short, into 3 right, tightens over crest.
Oh boy.
Into 1 left short, 30. Crest, 100.
Where are you taking us, lady?
Caution, crest, 30. 5 left short, into 6 right, 50. Right over bump, 70. Caution, crest, 60. 3 right short, into 2 left short, 40. 5 right, 120.
Wee.
Crest, into 6 left, over crest, 70. Slowing, slight right, through dip, and left over crest, 80. Caution, spare right, tightens, and 1 left short, and 3 left, opens.
Oh my god.
Into crest, and slight right, half long, into one left short.
Whoa, that was scary.
Square right, tightens, 40. Hairpin left, 80. 4 right short, caution, into left over crest, 30, right over crest, into turn square left, into square right, and 6 left sharp, 60.
There's a road. It's so steep down there.
140. Slide left, into right over crest, and crest, 40. 6 left, opens, slowing, 70. 4 right short, over crest, 100. 3 left sharp,
Uh-oh. There we
into
go.
slide right over crest, 50.
Any of these crests can like send you off the cliff.
Into
If
5
you're already
left,
running downhill.
5 left, 60. 5 left, tightens. And 6 left, into 6 right over crest, 90. Slowing. Turn, 1 right, half long, keep in, 30. Short, 3 right, 3 left, and 5 right, opens, 70.
Oh.
Onto tarmac, widens, 100. Long crest, 100.
Revo, thank you for the follow.
Slowing.
Welcome in.
Right, keep in, into 6 left over crest, 50. Crest, 150.
There's the wipe. All right.
100. Left
Close
over
to finishing,
crest,
right?
230, over finish,
Oh yeah.
to stop.
That's it.
Okay, that's a
Flying
9 minutes,
finish.
13.1.
Car only shows the gears. I wonder what speed I was going at there.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Oh my god. That is a thrilling rally there. Holy crap, what is up with the name alignment here? There you go. Got the right align it. The left align it. Look at that. Commander Swede up in 6th. Seagull 9th. Those are just the names that stand out to me. I don't really know. I mean, other than I know Swede is a streamer I've seen on Twitch often in this category. Yeah. All right. So we're in the lower half for this one, this stage. I'm like 26 seconds, which I still think is a decent gap for myself. Overall puts us 12th place for the Italian rally here. JRC 3 placements. Yeah, hey. I still, yeah. I'm glad I picked this category of car. I love the Fiesta. Obviously, I'm comfortable with it. And I placed pretty much dead center. Where I will be, my intention is to place like right here. This is the one I chose. This is the one I'm gonna place into. Sweet. Oh, they're your teammates, dude. Heck yeah. Good on you for noticing the stream title that I'm doing my JRC 3 placements, man. Thank you for stopping by and saying hi. Yeah, that teammates, man. Yeah, I'm running solo this time. I haven't met enough people in the JRC community to pick up a team or something. And honestly, I'm fine with that because I feel like I'd be a dead weight to the whole team.
Oh yeah.
That's really how I feel about that. We're gonna jump into Estonia right away. Although I do have to feed my cat, so we'll do a quick 5-minute break, do a stretch, let my left foot take a breather, and come back into Estonia for the last rally, cramming it all in on the last day, my guy, for the JRC 3 place.
Yippee!
We'll be right back. Carefully. Uh-oh. Let's flip through. Wait. Get out. I'm stuck in rocks. No, don't pull me up like that. Oh, hey. That spat me out the other side. Alright, that's one way to get out.
Thank
Thanks.
you, Curie, for grenading me out of a stuck spot.
Sure, let's go.
Well, let's start with the mace. The mace. Dang it. Friendly fire, suckers! I'm out of here.
Fortunately. Sometimes we choreograph the fireworks so the custom designs appear in the set order together. Nice. Yeah, for sure keep an eye on the sky. There's some custom pattern fireworks in there, in the mix. Like right now. Hell yeah. All the way. Look at those. I love.
No, in this room.
Oh, hot tourist destinations.
No, just go. No, just go. No, just go in the room.
Oh, there
Look,
it is.
It's right there.
Yeah. Dude, I was more worried about the Zombo.
That's so cool.
Are you hearing the sound too?
Yes.
Yes.
Aw, that's so dope. Cool. Yeah, I was letting that ad roll back in. Feeding the cat doesn't take too long, but hey, yeah, you're stuck for a team and placed in like RC 3 or 4. We would love to have you. Frolics. Oh, Frolics Racing. Yes, I recognize that name. That's I watch Becky B on Twitch. Dude races like I guess the Rally 1 cars in JRC, huh? Yeah. That's what connected me to JRC in the first place. That was cool.
Yahoo!
Yeah, if you got room and you don't mind dead weight, I can hop in.
Oh my god, that was badass!
That would be dope, dude. Yeah. I'm down. Yeah. My streaming schedule is sporadic. Playing games will rotate around workplace, of course. Yeah. Having a team just for me would be cool. Yeah, I'll take you up on that offer. See where these placements are. I have a good hunch I'll be placing in JRC 3 given my performance relative to the rest of the leaderboards right now.
Let's go!
Yeah. That would be dope. So, for Estonia, what are we looking at here? I think there's 3 stages. Yeah, 3 stages here. 3, and 10 in the middle with some rain. Or at least, oh yeah, that's rain and soggy dirt. That's, yeah, that icon means saturated, wet. I guess in this case, mostly gravel, some asphalt, and dirt. Yeah. Oh, with no service area in between, just the first one. So no chance to put on wet tires. I don't think we get those anyway for the gravel, do we? Do I know LCK Racing? Don't think I do. Oh, it's a weird text ribbon saying? Stream? Is it? Here, how about if I put it full screen? Pump that up and get the text chat showing. Oh, you're found? Oh, okay. Yeah, no, I'm not familiar with LCK Racing. As far as the weird text ribbon, I'm not sure which one you're talking about. Probably one of the animated stuff that's in the overlay. Team manager. Okay. Yeah, if you're recruiting, I'm willing to get in. I do stream. I mean, my streak of streaming has been sporadic lately, but yeah, when I do stream, it's probably WRC. If you're looking for streamers who are growing in talent? No, there's no talent here. Skill? Slowly? Yeah. Gradually. Whoa, gradually. Gradual increase. Rising in skill. Yeah, no. Speech to text. Oh, okay. No, yeah, I don't have speech to text enabled for the streams, but you may have closed captions turned on if you're watching on the desktop version. But that's not something I set up, so it's beyond my control if that's the case. That's okay.
Oh yeah.
Maybe some sort of toggle in the Twitch overlay or Twitch video player to turn that on and off. Let me know if I can help you more with that. Yeah, I'm flying kind of blind. Let's see. I want to do a shakedown. Just a blind shakedown. I don't do Estonia too often. So I guess wait, let me just double check. This is default setup. Actually, do I have Scania? Finland might be pretty close. Yeah, I'll start with the default, see how that goes, and then go grab that setup if there is one. Let me just check right now. If there even is one at all. We are in Estonia. Oh, there are setups. Hey, nice. Come back to this in a second. First, tires, soft and medium. For the distance we're doing, what is this? 10, 16. Oh, I guess we'll call it 17 again. 17 miles. The medium compound served me pretty well last rally in Italy. So we'll look at mediums or shakedowns, grab a fresh pair, and then
Start,
beats me, man.
6 left, 2 right. Good luck.
Oh, yeah!
That's gibberish to me. Yeah. I'm not the one setting up the closed captions. That's not under my control. So, my word of advice is if you are listening to this muted, sorry that the captions suck balls. But you want to turn the sound on. Yeah, pretty random gibberish, huh?
Mexico.
Just like the Italians. All right. For shakedown in Estonia.
5,
That's how
4,
we go with it.
3, 2, 1, go. Slowing, 6 left and 2 right, 30, crest. Into turn square left, tightens. Into right over crest, 80.
Square left. Why did I miss that call?
6
I'm
right,
practicing.
half long. And slight right over crest, 100. Left over jump. Into sudden slight right, 200.
Wasn't very sudden.
Crest, slowing, 50, 2 left, 130.
I'll slow down for this.
2 right, don't cut, 70. Finish.
Okay. Reminds me of Finland. 54 seconds for the first shakedown. That feels fast because typically I do 1 minute in the first sector shakedowns, but this is a short course. 3.8 miles. All right. Look at the setup that's shared here. There's 4 of them. What's the most recent? 3 months. Who's the highest rated? Me. We got. Does anything line up? Visi. Okay. That's wet though. This is set up for the dry. All the setups are... Oh, here we go. All stages. I like that idea. What's out of that one? Since you're managing, running a team more or less. Is it Finland and Dirt Rally 2? Okay, yeah, I did run Dirt Rally 2 quite a bit. So maybe the setup I have here from Finland. This is a WRC setups. Finland. I mean, I'm also looking at a website with WRC setups for Estonia, so maybe I'll just pick that. Yeah, that was a pretty flying fin stage there. So this should be a fun rally to go through again. All right. Oh, just one click down. 175. Whoa. Double take. That's a positive number. All right. And 175. Cool. Okay. That makes sense. Yeah, this is where the tuning... Whatever makes this tuning, yeah, the brakes are where I need help. Yeah, the default is very... They tend to just favor the center. 1951. If I use the handbrake at all, this seems like a pretty fast, straight run. Let's look at differentials next. 9. Again, a low one in the front. Will improve cornering at the cost of straight line stability. Okay, yeah. It's low in the front and high in the rear. Let's see, 9, 11. Maybe that just evens out. Maybe max this one now. No center lock. Rear. Here we go. 10. So they're low. Oh, yeah. Okay, low differentials in the front and rear. Hey, what do I know? But the setups so far have been really good. So I'll take their word for it. Okay, so the gear here is a little bit longer. 20. Oh, actually, quite a few clicks longer. 25. I guess I will copy this one. I usually just go straight to the final drive and slam it all the way to wherever they wanted me to put it at. But I'll look at this one. 30. 875. Sure, why not? And then here. Wow, all the way to 120. All right, cool. Final drive is 1. Yep. This is the one consistent thing through all setups, no matter what stage it's in. Final drive is just 0.1. Lincoln Whisper. Hey, nice. We'll check that out, man. Yeah, no, hey, thank you for extending that invitation already. Like, my sim racing streams are not very. I don't think they invite too many viewers. So the fact that you even found this, 1, thank you for stopping by and saying hi at all. And then 2, even extending the invitation is pretty generous of you. I really appreciate that. That means a bit. Hopefully I can live up to whatever standards you got. Or at least put in the effort to help out. Let's... Oh, this is too... Yeah, these are softer dampers. Yep. Pretty much across the board. springs. All right, so I have a hunch this will help a lot too. Yep, a higher right. Oh wow, that's almost. They max out the front just about. Maybe you can explain this part to me because I think I've been. LCK Racing is known in the server as Charlie. Okay. Gotcha. Keep an eye out for that, man. If you know a bit about tuning, which I don't, that's why I follow a setup guide. In this game, if it is going to the left, if I take this slider to the left, is that well? Okay, that's the right eye. That's a very bad example. My bad. I'm talking about spring rates. Left, I understood to be softer, and the right, I understood to be firmer. Is that correct? So 151. Because I thought we would be running. In my mind, I thought it would be running softer springs, which would be further to the left, on a gravel rally like this one with some hills and bumps and jumps, and stuff like that. The anti-roll bar is down. This is also a pretty high ride height. Okay, I'm impressed. This is not what I would have thought of. Like I said, I know very little about tuning these things. That's why I just follow these things. Yes, you're correct. 144 for front and 108 for rears. Okay. I'll give that a shot. And 108. Okay, yeah, that is not too far. Oh. 109? Sound good? We'll split the difference. Yeah. Okay. No worries, dude.
Luigi did it!
Good to know. All right. Yeah. Let's do another shakedown. Let me just save it. Oh, not load. Save. What is that? 26 meters? Oh, you're looking at anti-roll bar? Reduce the right. Oh, right height. Oh, okay, okay. Yeah, this is pretty high. Okay, I'm not crazy then. I'm both, right? Because, yeah. Oh, 36. Okay. Hey, man, no worries. There we go. Oh, good, dude. Yeah, the keys are all together. I'm bad at typing, too. No worries. Seriously. It's all good. Yeah, I knew that despite this Estonia, if it's anything like Finland, it'll have some hills and jumps. But I don't think I still want that ride height so high. Yeah, that should handle quite well. That's what I'm after, man. I want to keep this thing on the road. Right, save it again. And let's just give it a go. Appreciate the help, man.
Bingo! Ho 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 ho!
Let's see how this feels. What was the time? With one.
Starts 6 left.
I already forgot it, and frankly, it doesn't matter. Let's just go.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go. Slowing, 6 left and 2 right. 30. Crest into turn square left. Tightens into right over crest. 80.
I remember the square left.
6 right, half long, and slight right over crest, 100. Left over jump, into into sudden slight right, 200.
Where is the slight right? I don't.
Crest, slowing, 50, to left, 130. To right, don't cut, 70. Finish.
Yeah, handled it really good. Excellent. What's our time? 51 seconds. Okay, so the time was 58. 54. Okay. Yeah, substantial difference there. Obviously, I didn't botch the right, left, left turn in the early stage. Cool, cool. I like that. Yeah, thanks a lot for the help, dude. All right. Feeling good about that setup already. It is a short stage, so let me remind myself. What are we looking at in the middle stage? Yeah, 10.5 miles wet. That map. I mean, Estonia has not been. Yeah, okay, so there's a greater elevation difference. Well, I still think. Crash out. Wish you good luck and happy rallying. But oh, dude, Rebo, yo, again, thank you for stopping by. Yes, go do your, I guess, sleeping. Hopefully, that's what crashing means here in this case. Because my plan is not to crash yet. Yeah, medium tires on. Yeah, for this distance of rally, I think I did. Yes, I already have mediums equipped. We're on the same page for that, dude.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'll definitely check out that invitation on Discord, and I'll see where I slot in. Again, thanks a lot, dude. We'll, yeah, definitely need that luck to get through these placement rallies. I think I am pretty well settled into JRC 3. This is fun. The Fiesta's the fun car. Yeah, dude. Thanks again, man.
Awesome!
Let's just do the shakedowns just for funsies. Yeah, I think I'm ready to do the rally. 51 seconds is the time to beat. Holy hell.
6 left, 2 right, good luck.
Luigi did it!
Yeah, you're right. Just a little detour out of there to get the cat fed. Yeah, we'll hammer where the tires get worn down in shakedowns. So, let's have at it.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go. Slowing, 6 left and 2 right. 30, crest. Into turn square left, tightens. Into right over crest, 80. 6 right, half long. And slide right over crest, 100. Left over jump. Into sudden slide right, 200.
Very sudden.
Crest, slowing, 50. 2 left, 130.
Go, right?
2 right, don't cut, 70. Finish.
Just based off of the shakedowns, Estonia is going to be like one of the gentler rallies. Alright, ooh. Just over a half second slower on that run, probably with the little clipping I did at that one corner. Just fine. That's super fine. Cool. Yeah, like I said, yeah, I think I am ready to go into it. Let's go for the mediums. Keep the spare tire just in case. It doesn't look like too dangerous of a rally. And 10 miles without a service area is quite a bit. That's it for the shakedowns. Yeah, let's just go right into it. Let me just double check repairs. Clean. I like it.
Oh, yeah!
I got that before it faded out. I like I like showing off the side of the car. Alright. Come on, drive to survive and good luck. Yes, again, thank you, dude. Hell yeah.
Start.
Gonna get this
6
car
left,
out of here in one
2
piece.
right. Good luck. Five,
Let's go.
3, 2, 1, go. Slowing, 6 left and 2 right. 30, crest into turn square left, tightens into right over crest, 80. 6 right, half long, and slight right over crest, 100. Left over jump, into sudden slight right, 200.
Flat out through here. I love this.
Crest, slowing, 50, 2 left, 130.
It's cleaner. I like that.
Don't cut, 70. Lead 6 left, half long, don't cut, 200. Jump, 40, big jump, 150.
Love big jumps.
Brake,
Yeah.
5 left over crest, keep in, and 6 right over jump, 120. Small crest, slowing, 120, 1 left, 70. 5 right,
Sorry, sign.
60. Slight left over crest, tightens, 40, left over crest. And slight right, slowing, 100. Turn 3 left, onto tarmac, 220.
Tarmac. Let's see that as part of the percentage.
Crest, 230. Slowing. Turn square right.
Love the mixture.
60.
Oh no, I missed it.
260.
Distraction. Hello. With a follow. Come on in.
Jump, 200.
I'm 200. All right.
Crest, 40. 6 right, past junction, and slight left over crest, 130. Lead 5 right, tightens, 60. 6 6 left over crest, don't cut, 230.
Alright. Get our mind back in the game here.
5 left over crest, 70, 4 left short, 40, crest, 50, late 5 left, very long.
First stage, I'll be with you in a minute.
6 right, over crest, 260. Right, tightens, 50, crest, 90.
Oh, that got sent sideways so fast.
Late 3
Should have been easy on the brakes.
Finish, 140 to stop. Okay, that's a 3 minute, 31.7.
Sounds fine for 3.5 miles, 3.8 miles or whatever it was. Ooh, hell yeah, thank you.
Oh yeah.
Alright, 6. Alright, now. Yeah. Missing that breaking point did not help. I blame. Yeah. My name is Jeff? Oh, my name is Jeff. I just get it right now. Okay. I had to process that in the mind for a second there. Sorry.
Come back here. What's the matter for you? Oh, my trophy.
Oh, okay. I did not realize that penalty was 30 seconds for missing the breaking point. Good God. All right. I wish I could do that again, but yeah. I just remember that, dude. Hell yes. Welcome in. Thank you so much for stopping by, my guy. Where is the music? A little bit of this replay here. Who needs music when you have the sound of the engine? That was cool. That looked like a cool shot. Let's go back. Hey, creep eye. Dust is in the way. I have to go really far back to play that dust, huh? Blind. I want to catch that screenshot. That looked dope. Here we go, here we go, here we go. Here it comes. I don't like how the lights just overwhelm the scene here. Oh, I thought it was staying in slow motion. Damn it! I gotta rewind again to clear the smoke. Or the dust. And I'll just let it run so the headlights don't overwhelm. Lift off. Slow enough for Steam to capture a screenshot. Levels to show up in the back. Measure. Oh my god. Why not? I'll just pick it up. Alright. On to the next stage. It's gonna go for the socials for sure.
Here we go.
Like, I was able to make it in. Oh, there's that rain. Oh. These are just about to get more slippery.
Starts 4 left, crest, good luck.
A little visit from the cat. Good luck. Okay. It look better with the lights on or off? It's just enough sunlight. I think if it gets too dark, I'll turn the lights back on. This practically makes the rain invisible.
5, 4,
I'm
3,
Luigi,
2,
number 1.
1, go. 4 left, opens into crest, 60, slight left, 80. 5 right over crest, tightens, and 5 left, into 6 right, opens, 40. Crest, 60. Jump, 40. Right over jump, 60. 5 left, keep in, 60. Left over jump, and 4 right, half long, around bale, 60. Left over crest, 170. Big jump, keep middle, 40. Slight right, and
Stage a
6
bit.
left. Don't cut, slowing, 70. Small crest, into 3 right, long. 30, small crest, 40.
Got on the gas too
6
early.
left. Tightens 4, 50. Slight left. And crest, 160. 4 right, tightens, 30. 3 left over crest, opens.
I guess I should have slowed down more.
Right, 60. Short, 5 left, 5 right, 50. Slight left, very long tightens. 5 left short, over jump, 50. 6 left.
Another jump.
6 right, half long. And jump, 100. 6 right. And 5 left short, over crest, 160. 4 right short, don't cut, 50. Late, 4 left over jump. Open 6, 50. Big jump, 90. Slight right over crest, 70.
Oh, that is a big jump. Holy shit.
Caution, 4 left over jump, 100.
4 left over jump. Yeah, okay. I've heard of this one.
Turn spear right, don't cut. And 2 left.
There's that rock.
And crest, 120.
Been here before. I just now, this is filling in the memories now.
Slowing, 6 left sharp, and 5 right, half long, don't cut, and 2 left sharp. And left over crest, 100. 3 right, 30, 5 left over jump, keep in, and slight left, long. Into jump, 50. Slight right, extra long. 130.
Extra long.
Caution, 5 left short, over jump, 160.
Is that hay bale?
Left over crest, and slight right, 140.
Yep. That is. Good call. Figured that out. I've seen that, yeah. I moderated for another streamer earlier this morning. Exact same. Well, I'll take care of that phrase later. Yeah, good call. Take care of that right away. Build up.
How many times do we have to teach you this lesson?
Listen, old man.
Luigi did it!
Alright. Hopefully that doesn't distract too much.
Jump, keep middle, and slight left, 70. 6 left, tightens, 50. 6 right, tightens, into right over jump, 90. 5 right, opens, and crest.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Into 6 right, 40. Turn.
Good now.
Right. 70. Caution, jump, sudden 5 left, and 1 right short, don't cut, into 2 left short, and crest, 40. Open hairpin left, don't cut, opens 4, 30.
Oh, so wide. Handbrake failed me. Come on, buddy. Back on it. Get back on it. There we go. Ooh, that's not good for my placement.
Long tightens, don't cut, and 2 left tightens, and jump, and 5 left, into turn 1 left, short, into 6 right, 6 left, don't cut, and turn 2 right, don't cut, 130, crest, and small jump, 140, slight left, 170.
Fortunately, I can't go back and redo that.
6 left, tightens, over bump.
That's
50,
rallying.
slowing, slight right over crest, 40, turn square right, around Beale. 70,
Did I stall it? Oh shit.
slight right over crest, 70.
Alright, pretty sloppy.
Right 6 left, long,
We'll give
tightens
him
5,
that.
60. 4 right short, over crest, 190. 4 right, long. 90. Crest, 120.
On it. Okay.
Small crest, slowing, 130. Crest, keep right, 50. Right entry chicane.
Oh, chicanes, yes.
60. Crest, 70. Slight left, through
Thought those existed.
200. Long crest, into slight right, slowing, 100. Small crest, 30, turn 1 left, around Beale. 70, crest, 80.
Oh, it's so slippery in this rain.
Slight right, long. Into crest,
I can
70.
be together a bit longer.
5 left, half long, 180. Crest, 370. Slight right, over crest, 80. 6 right, slowing, 110.
Ooh, I bid in too much of that. I bid in way too much of that.
Turn square right, around Beals. 30, crest, 120.
Making me. Yeah, I just understood it.
Square
Yep.
left,
I'm
around
late.
Beal. 150, narrows.
I was expecting just a right angle.
Small crest. And slight left, 40. 6 right over crest, 60. Crest. And left over crest, 160. Late 6 left, don't cut, 70. Slowing, 6 left over crest, and 3 right, 70. Slight left over crest, into slight right, 120.
Sure, we'll turn on the lights now.
Option, 6 left over
Rain's
crest,
letting up too.
tightens 5, 100. 3 right short,
Rain's picking up
100.
again. And
6
letting up.
left, 90. Late, 6 left
Understand
over
the rain.
crest,
All right.
don't cut, 50. Slight right over crest. And crest, 50. Left over crest, 130. 6 left, don't cut, and crest, 80. 6 left over crest, keep in, 120. 6 right, opens. Slight right, long, 140. Crest, 30, crest, and 3 left short, don't cut, 80. Right entry chicane, 230.
Go. Alright.
Slight left over crest, 90. 6 left over crest, and bump into 6 right, opens, over small jump, 100. Bumps. Into slight left, very
This is like Finland. This is so fun.
tightens 5, over crest, and slight right, into slight left, 40. Small crest, into 5 right, tightens, around Beale, into 5 left, 70. Long crest, 30. 4 left, long, slowing, 120. 1 left, at house, and slight right, 80.
Henry flick. Oh yeah.
3 right, opens, into crest, 60. 3 left short, 170. 5 5 right short, around wheel, 100. Slowing, crest, 40. Square right short, around wheel, and 6 left, half long, 50. Right over crest, and 6 left.
Almost there.
Over finish, 100 to stop. Okay, that's a 9 minute, 26.3.
Not bad. Not bad. The rain. Okay. The rain's fun to drive in. Should have been more prepared for that though. Not bad. Not last. No penalties this time. Feel much better about this one than the last one. However, yeah, definitely know that I could have raced a better rally. More practice put in later though. Let that replay run while I add that phrase to the band phrases. Like I said, that's the third one I've seen today. Not on my channel, but other ones I bought. Left 5 into that wall, I hear catches a lot of people. I'm so glad I recognized it.
Oh yeah!
That's the long stage out of the way. We should be good. In this last stage, what is it, 3.6 miles? 2.5, close enough. Ground is still saturated, wet. But it's no longer raining, which is nice.
Bang, bang.
Starts 90, 4 right. Good luck.
Make sure the microphone's in the good spot. Alright. And for the last loop in Estonia. Here we go.
4,
Let's
3,
cut that one out.
2, 1, go. 90. 4 right, 40. Slight left, 70. Late 3 right, 30. Crest, 100. 4 right, keep in. And 3 left, 30. 2 left, tightens. Into 3 right, tightens, 40. Slight left. And 6 right short, 130. Big jump,
All right.
250.
Jump.
Left over bump, 150. Long crest, 100. 4 left, long, 60. Slowing, slight left, 50. Turn square right, 30. Slight left, 130.
Oh, that was beautiful. Oh.
Right over crest, 160. 6 right over crest, 70. Right over crest. And 5 right opens, 50. Slight right over crest, 40. 6 left over jump, 50. 6 right over jump, 100. 6 left over jump. And right over crest, 50. 50, slight left, long 80. Slight right, slowing 140. Turn square left, around wheel 70. 6 right, slowing 100.
Should have pushed the clutch in there to keep the revs up.
Turn 1 left short and 5 left into slight right 50. 5 right short into left over crest 100. 5 right tightens 100. Slight right over jump, slowing 150. Turn square right and square left 40 through gate.
Wait, was this the racetrack?
Turn 1 right.
This is Portugal.
To tarmac. And 2 left, half long, into crest.
The racetrack was in Portugal.
40.
Forgot about this one.
3 left, tightens, 60. Open hairpin right, 60. 2 left over crest, opens very long, 40. 4 left sharp, and crest, 40. Left over crest, into slight right, onto gravel, and turn hairpin right, 100.
Went quicker.
Left over crest, and slight right, over bump, 60. Left over crest, into 3 left, 40. 6 right, 50.
Oh, there's a finish. Alright, cool.
Into 5 right,
That was cool.
to stop. Okay,
Cool
that's
stage there.
24.6.
Oh, that was fun. I love Estonia.
Bang, bang.
Oh my god, that was badass!
Let's see where that puts us into. There we go. Best finish for this rally so far. 8th place. Puts us overall in 11th. Yeah. I mean, shit. Some sloppy places early on in the first 2 stages. Definitely some places to improve here in Estonia. Definitely play it more because that was fun.
I'm Luigi, number 1.
So 1 minute, 49 seconds. I think there was a 30-second penalty somewhere in there, so probably could have been closer to 119, which, you know what, would have kept me in 11th anyway. I don't think I would have beaten this guy with a 119. So that's my placements. Where am I placing in RaceNet? That is all 3 of them, I believe. Browser. Look. The placement's done with less than 12 hours to go still. Had I gone to bed at all, yeah, there's 10 hours left. Had I got to bed at all tonight, I would not have made the placements. So placement Rally 1, which was in Japan. These 12. Good. Placement Rally 2 overall. 12. Seeing a pattern here. So Estonia. 15th. Okay. Yeah. I wish that had gone smoother for me. 15 out of 17 entries. Yeah. Yeah. That could have been. I'd have kept my head in the game for Estonia. I think Estonia would have been just as good as, well, like the other 2. So yeah, I think Rally 3 is the place for me to be. That will conclude our placements. Let's see if did I unlock anything new in the Rally Pass? I don't believe I did. Because I already had that decal. The last thing I got was the gloves with a helmet too. And there's 1 day and 9 hours left on this rally pass. Never make it to the end. I just do not play enough in this game to make it to the very end. Although that racing suit looks dope. I like this racing suit. Ooh. Some text on the back? I don't see that too often. That looks cool. Right here, next Rally Pass season, all the decals are available for all the cars, which is nice. Yeah, like, this is a cool livery. Not available to anything but the WRC class. So, placements are set. We'll see if the organizers agree. And I'll look into that. What was it called? I gotta scroll over to it. I immediately forgot the name. LCK Racing. Check that out on the Discord, man. Again, thank you so much. Hi.
Oh, yeah!
That is so cool to even pull any attention of any sort in this game. But I've streamed it a couple times. Yeah. Oh, wrap it up here. Let's end to the ending scene. Folks, thank you. Thank you so much for hanging out today and lurking, chatting. Shout outs to Cheeseburger Jesus for the raid, the early on raid of 3. Guy, you rock. Started rolling that ball down the hill, collecting the rest of the views that showed up later. Shout outs to Grupo for the follow. My name's Jeff. I'm Jeff. And Kiwi Pie for using your channel points as well. So good. That was a good selection of rallies. Props to the organizers of the JRC making those placements there. And thank you for watching today, folks. I want to remind you to have a good time this week. Socials are over here in the tiniest text possible for me to see on the spot. There we go. Linktree/MetaLink. All the links are there. Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, and if you're so inclined, Mastodon is where I'm most active lately. So jam that out. Folks, wear your seatbelts today for the rest of the week. Actually, we're starting the week again. So definitely wear your seatbelts for the rest of the week. And we'll see y'all next time for another stream at some point, hopefully. How about it? Take it easy, folks.